Good evening, everybody, and welcome aboard to round 2 of this year's ASR Supercars Championship. It's the Sydney triple header from Sydney Motorsport Park, but not quite like this. As we alluded to last round, 3 of the opening 4 rounds, the track is circulated in less than a minute. And where you're used to seeing Sydney Motorsport Park take close to a minute and 30 seconds, tonight it's the Druitt layout. You can see it there on your screen. Cars peeling off to the left at turn 4 instead of going to the right. So the lap is much, much shorter, somewhere around 58 seconds on average. And as I welcome to the microphone for the first time tonight, Benjamin Rhodey Rhodes. Rhodey, this is a unique challenge. We have not raced on this configuration before, so not only are there records up for grabs, but there's a little bit of pride, I think, at stake here as to who can tame the short-haired beast.
Another good area to everybody watching along with us, and yeah, this is going to be a different challenge for the Supercars drivers. This will be one of those times where more than ever, anybody who's wildcarded up the Dev Series will have an advantage. The only other time this is seen an appearance is in a Super Series endeavour, which doesn't really play much into the pace of the Supercars. So for the guys in Dev Series, of which we have one wildcard tonight, he is uniquely qualified to come well racing.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Absolutely spot on the money there. If you've come up through the Dev Series ranks, you are in the prime position. So the only person in the field tonight substituting for Phil Boak is Brapp in the 046 PBF machine. And he's the only one that's actually had some exposure to this circuit in the last couple of weeks. Actually, Dev Series round was 2 weeks ago. A little bit different to the usual 3-week block that we like to run here in ASR. There was an extra week in between. So that was unfortunately my fault, ladies and gentlemen. The broadcast didn't quite go according to plan for that weekend. It actually coincided with the Winton State Series round, which is I was up there for that, so we elected to delay the broadcast and the round for this week just by an extra week, but hopefully be back on schedule with the 3-week block starting again in the next week or so. And there's a little bit of a surprise in store, Rhodey. We've been G'ing this up throughout the last week or so. There's been a couple of Instagram posts. We're not going to quite fully reveal the actual full finished product tonight, but we have got a little bit of little something special coming your way. And just out of curiosity, here's just a little sneak preview of what you can expect. So this is earlier in the week. This is at Mendig. This is the aero testing for the ASR Generation 3 Supercars happening right here between the Camaro and the Mustang. As they do in the Supercars in the real world, they do the straight line aero testing. There's actually a really nice shot there of the two cars lined up doing the 0 to 200 and the roll down pass down the runway at Mendig. And well, we'll get to see a little bit more of these cars a little bit later in the program, Rhodey.
Yes, I will clarify that we have the budget for proper testing. Unlike Supercars, we've seen in the last 6 months there's been issues with the validity of roll-down testing for testing all forms of aero, but guaranteed these cars will be out and will be balancing in each other properly. But yeah, at this stage, we are in the early development stage of the cars. There is obviously still some work to be done.
Yes, so we'll get a little bit of an up-close look interior-wise and sound-wise and things with these cars a little bit later on in the program. This is just a little bit of something to whet your appetite. So hang around and stick it out, enjoy the racing, and more importantly, enjoy what comes your way. Probably, I would say, between race 2 and 3 is what we're aiming for there. So that's just a little, as I said, little something to wet your whistle and keep you interested for a bit later on in the program. But back to more important things, Rhodey. The championship. Championship is very much alive. We'll take a look at the points in between qualifying and the first race this evening. But there wasn't too many penalties coming out of round number 1. There was just, I think, 1 or 2 incidents to review. So all in all, very, very good start to the season. No real dramas that befell anybody, apart from I think Steve Burko in race 1 was the only major casualty, clouding the wall at Calder Park in the last sector there, just on the right-hand side. So he was the main casualty in race 1, and Cam Rutledge the main casualty in race 2, with only getting a couple of laps under his belt. But aside from that, it was a good start to the year.
Yeah, very very clean start to the year, which is what we're liking to see. And look, it was potentially a little bit contentious whether that would be the case, because as I mentioned at the start of the season, as I'm going to probably keep mentioning as we go throughout the year, with what we've done and with the changes that have been made to the lineup this year, the top end pace has come down a little bit, and crucially, the guys at the bottom have all picked up their pace a bit. So we have got the tighter grid this year, which on the face of it should mean, yeah, tight grid. We should have potential for, too many cars trying to get into one point of the track, which obviously then leads to incidents and accidents and safety cars. Safety cars lead to safety cars, but yeah, everyone's been very well behaved so far. Calder, to be fair, is an easier track to work with. It does a very nice wide front straight, although to be fair, not too much happens on a front straight usually. And there are some tight chicanes at Calder, but there was plenty of room between the chicanes that you could sort of gauge up and put your car in a safe position. It'll be an interesting package then coming into tonight, where the second sector, not so much the length of it, but just for a fun fact, the second sector is only 7 seconds long because of where the timing lips sit otherwise. But that middle chicane has more elevation than probably half of the, I'd say probably half of the tracks on the, no, probably not half, but definitely has more elevation than some full circuits in Australia, just in that little up, down, left, right chicane.
Yeah, you're not
So
wrong.
I can see
Absolutely.
that being a spot with, especially with the curbs involved and with people trying to make up moves, I could see that being a spot where perhaps the I wouldn't say necessarily the quality, but some of what we built up starts to slip a little bit. But even that said, these guys have proven so far in the 3 races we've seen this year that they are very well behaved and also very well experienced group of drivers amongst each other. And those that are new have managed to slot in fairly well. So I think we'll do pretty well again tonight.
Yes, I think so too. And it's a good segue. Let's have a look at our track overview with thanks to Google Earth Studio as we hone in on the New South Wales region of Australia, more specifically the Sydney metropolitan area. And as you can see from where we sort of zone into here, where Sydney is, Eastern Creek's a long way out. It's well into Western Sydney, actually west-northwest if you're being politically correct. There's the old the lake and the quarry precinct not too far away, which is now sort of nowadays is transformed into a logistics hub with a lot of warehouses around it, just to the south of SMP. And here we go. And as we said, you're used to seeing the 12-turn layout, which has the dog leg that breaks off at turn 4, turns right instead of turning left, and has that little sort of square section of track hanging down at the bottom there, which is known as the Gardiner layout. Tonight, you called it perfectly, Rody. That sort of middle sector, turns 4 and 5 and a couple of short little blips. That's it. It is a lightning quick sector too, but so crucial to getting right on this very, very short and tricky lap.
Yeah, and that's going to be one of the spots to really, I think more so than the traditional corners that you see around the full layout to make and lose speed, is that chicane. Because you can lose so much taking the cautious line in, you can lose so much taking the wrong line through it, and then lose so much at the other end, or maybe not so much because the straights aren't terribly long, but you can also lose a bit of an exit by either not getting on the throttle in time, or getting the throttle too early, or hitting one of the bumps that exist right at the point where you want to get on throttle. And yeah, it's a very treacherous corner, but as per usual, turn 2, easy passing opportunity, or a passing opportunity, you have to set that one up, but that's an easy place to try and set up a pass. But you have to keep in mind for a return of serve around turn 3, or the potential for an over-under through turn 3. And then turn 6, 7, 8, we saw this last year. Supercars, I think, was fairly well behaved. I saw a dev series, which is a couple of nose to tails there. But yeah, easy spot coming through 6 and 7 if you're in a train of someone getting a bit too ambitious at the back, or 7 and 8 with the rules that exist through the use of the paved area on the outside of 7 and 8, what opportunities that opens up for someone who's in position for a pass, and then the guy they're racing with happens to stray a little bit wide. And I think I'm by myself
Yep.
now.
Actually, you were by yourself. I'd actually just muted myself very quickly just to have a little bit of a cough, still trying to get over a couple of things that my young family have unfortunately infected me with. And so I'm trying to manage my voice a little bit. But no, what I was just sort of about to say was I struggled in the Dev Series race. And a number of drivers, I think, struggled in the Dev Series race with the flip-flop, as we're affectionately calling it, turns 4 and 5. It's a difficult section of corners to get right. You can sort of bite off a fair bit of the curb on the inside of turn 4, but if you bite off too much, you'll be awarded a track strike. You can sort of straddle the outside curb at turn 5. Again, if you stray too far, you'll get a track strike, and then you've really got to try and feed the car nicely onto that little bit of concrete turf that's on the outside of turn 5 and just try and maximise your straightaway speed. But that's not the difficult part. The difficult part is, as you said, the left turn, and then all of a sudden it abruptly kicks up, vertically for turn 5, which you then got to turn to the right. So just getting your one-line groove going into that corner is going to be really tricky. The first couple of laps of the races I'm expecting are going to be quite challenging for the field through those couple of turns. The rest of the circuit I'm not too sort of concerned about, because there's there's mooted positions where you can run side by side through turn 1, turn 2, turn 3. When you get to 4 and 5, it's going to be very difficult to run side by side through there at full speed.
Absolutely, and we talk about Dev Series. I mean, I had a slightly better night in Dev Series, but again, that trickiness played in, and we saw one thing that's going to potentially play into this race as well as we go on is the late race safety car, which with where the Dev Series was at with their tyres, definitely played a difference. And with where these guys potentially going to be at with their tyres will play a difference as well. But we can get into the race strategy after we're done qualifying, which we're not far off starting now.
Yes, qualifying just about to get underway. Server has ticked over, so just waiting on the cars to spawn and everybody to get ready to go. It's actually good to see a couple of drivers in the field this week compared to the last round that didn't have a chance to make us. You can see that both the Fuchs HSP dealer team cars are there, Lockie Burke and Hans Brunswick. They are in for their first races of the season. Likewise, it's great to welcome back Tim Redmond as well. Because remember, Tim missed out on round number 1 through no fault of his own. It was actually through a very late hardware failure. And he was trying to sort that right up until the death. To get out and going, he's actually had to go and buy a new wheel in between rounds. So it'd be good to welcome him back, because we're expecting him, Rhodey, to be one of the front runners for this year's championship, to hopefully really give Will Devonish a run for his money.
Absolutely, and he has had a round off, which will impact impact how things go. But we saw last year, I believe it was, that Will had to miss a round due to pre-planned events, and we don't know whether that's going to happen at this stage yet. But one of those things can play into it. Or, to be fair, a last-minute hardware failure came for Will as well, because I think it's been a while since Will has invested in new gear. I know that Will runs his gear pretty hard with the sort of pace he's doing, so. Look, it's nothing's guaranteed yet. There's a couple of other drivers actually in the picture for stuff that, in theory could be championship runners that are going to be hamstrung with a round off. Another one who isn't here tonight but will be here for the rest of the season, fingers crossed, is Leonard Gross. Wildcard at round 1 after a wildcard from Super 2, when he was one of 2 drivers that was so successful in Super 2 that he's now Supercars full-time. The other one being Ryan Cox, who is here tonight in the 55 Castrol Mustang. Well, his team are preparing his car. But yeah, Leonard's one of those guys, and Bear Ryan was up in the picture as well. They're one of the a couple of guys that could be in the picture as well for the championship. They just need to somehow come back from that deficit of 1 round off, the same as Tim Redmond. Yeah,
you're right there. It's a simple case of they've had their wild card, they've missed a couple of rounds, and they'll hopefully get back in for the rest of the season. The important thing to note, though, too, compared to last year, is there's no drop round. We did have a drop round last year that played on a lot of people's minds as to how they were going to attack this season. As you said, Will Devonish had a pre-planned one, so effectively your drop round was 0, which is perfect. For the drivers that attended every single round, though, it became a real bit of trouble, because if they had several poor rounds, then they were dropping a poor round. So consistency is key when you have a drop round in play, but thankfully there isn't one this year as we get laps underway. All cars on circuit except for 2. Lewis Wedding in the Real Holden Pixel Racing Team Commodore. And then the other one is Zach Brown, who again, another one that missed round number 1, substituted for by Bratt. And the interesting stat, Rody, coming out of this, because Zach Brown, for those avid viewers, remember, had a bit of a major collision with Corey McFarlane at Pukekohe in the final round of qualifying last year and the Supercars Championship when he was a wild card, and he picked himself up a rear-of-grid penalty.
He did, and between the time that he acquired that penalty and the time that he served it, it's been a total of 168 days, which is, I think, longer than a couple of seasons that we've had here in ASR. A couple of shorter social series or a rookie season, something like that. Castle runs right back to the 11th of November last year. And so he's not the, as we were discussing earlier with Zach, he's not the driver, he's not the longest between a served penalty and today, or between an acquired penalty and today. There are a couple of drivers who picked up penalties in their last races at ASR. And obviously it was their last race, so they're not coming back to serve that penalty. But yeah, it's a stat, and Zach was like, "Oh, do I get a trophy?" And we kind of had a discussion, and it's probably not a stat to be proud of.
Yeah.
I think that's a stat that people are going to try and leave to Zach, and no one's going to try and topple his position on that one.
No, I think so. I think you best be left that one alone, Zach. It's like the old chicane at Spa. If you like it, you're kind of on your own. Like me, because I don't mind that part of the circuit. Let's have a look at how the times are standing. It's only a 10-minute qualifying session, so it's going to go very, very quickly. At the moment, Lockie Burke, a bit of a surprise packet. He missed the last round. He's on top. Oh, Ben Hall, just noticed him. He was up in P2 there. He's had a major moment through.
Didn't have much in reserve to allow for that, so that's what's sprayed him wide. But now a couple of guys pushing quite hard. Tim Redmond now up to the top of the pile. He's 300s.
He's 76,000. 76,000 is the margin. Tim Redmond to Lockie Burke. Yeah, other way around. And yeah, then it's about 5 or 6 thousandths of a second between Burke and Ben Hall at the moment. So that's an interesting thing to watch. Yeah, you've got to keep in mind too, when we look at the timing screens at the moment, there's actually 2 B halls on there, because we've got a Bailey Hall in the 38 machines, part of the Beyond Racing Young Guns. He's actually on screen at the moment, almost being bump drafted by Lockie Burke down the front straight. So that's him there. So that's Bailey Hall. And then, of course, we've got Ben Hall, who's in the Luke McHugh Racing Commodore, currently third on the grid, which is the split livery car that you saw going off at this part of the circuit about 60 seconds ago. So we're going to do our best to work out, we'll have to be referring to live races, I think, a lot tonight, Rody, just to make sure we know where they both are on the track. Unfortunately for us, live races is being a little bit of a perennial problem at the moment. Like it was last round, it's about 30 seconds or so behind it. Looks like it's stabilising, but we'll keep an eye on that over the course of the night, and hopefully it will serve us right. As Termo, Curtis Egmanis goes to the top, almost into the 57s. He did 57.9 in practice earlier this evening. Termo, he's actually just pulling off at turn 1 to get ready to go back to the pits, and he's got 2 3/4 tenths on Lockie Burke right now.
Yeah, so that's been a pretty good run for Termo. He was up towards the top in the practice sessions this week, and as has been mentioned, you know, the art of the sandbag, or the not giving away your full time early, so it's hard to gauge off of those sessions. But no, Termo is running pretty well. The interesting driver I'm looking at the moment, where they're running or not running, is Will Devonish, who's currently sitting in 9th, which is a little while down for what we expect for Will. I have an inkling that he's got something still on the bag. I have heard rumours of gaps of tenths compared to set bests versus potential bests, but I can't remember what those were, and to be fair, it's probably best I don't remember what those were, because those weren't for my consumption anyway. But yeah, the gist of what I'm saying is that Will Devonish in 9th, 3 3/4 minutes left to go in the session. Almost pushing into a bit too late territory for him, and I say that he's gone to the top, so forget what I said.
He's gone into the 57s. He's quite comfortably into the 57s now as well, Devonish. So 57.846, which is the quickest time we've seen so far throughout the practice sessions that have been running for the last couple of weeks. So he's got the headlights on there as well, just making sure Nathan Higginson is smartly out the way. He's on a flying lap, and he does just that, so that's good heads-up driving. And Devonish, is he going to improve in Sector 1 split? He does, by absolutely nothing, by the width of a cigarette paper. He is up at Sector number 1, but he's down then at Sector 2. See how quickly that is? It's the sector's like there, and then it's there. it's like that's how quick Sector 2 goes. It's absolutely nothing.
It's one of those few tracks that the only thing that it shares with that is some of the really short ovals that we've run before, where the sectors are so short in distance from each other that you actually don't get any drop in the live update for yourself between Sector 1 time and Sector 2 time. So,
and at the start-finish line, look at that. He was 3/1000ths of a second off his current best time. So, you know, that just goes to show you that's I guess consistency over a lap, isn't it, as well? Just not being able to gain too much time or lose too much time. He actually just really swayed back and forth in just such a small, narrow window.
Yeah, and with the end of the field that he's pushing up at, you know, he's 2 tenths ahead of Turnus Hermanos currently. You start to get a point where you start to get diminishing returns for the effort you're putting in, and he can drive so much harder, but he can only drive so much harder at the end of the pace bracket. As you see, like I'll say that he was 0.22 or 0.022, but of course, in Sector 7 seconds long, he's now 0.014 off. It just updates before I actually have a chance to actually comment on it. But yeah, that said, I actually just watched him scrub wide, so I think he's setting up for a run this lap around. And that's the other thing as well, is how you want to attack this qualifying session. Because this track, as we saw in Dev Series, does like to chew up the soft tyre, especially through, actually just generally, it likes to chew up the right side tyres quite happily with a lot of left-hand corners around here. So even in qualifying, I'd argue that's a concern. You can't just go out and do a 10-minute session, probably split into 2 5s.
Yeah, I think so. What a revelation this guy was. Just in behind Tim Redmond at the moment. Ryan Cox, he's in the Castrol Racing Mustang this week, but he's of course been promoted along with Leonard Grossel to the Supercars fold moving forward, but in lieu of not having the delivery ready in time, he's going to run the Mustang this round, as he has a little bit of a wobble through turn number 1, caught a little bit too much curb, but he is pressing on. He's currently inside the top 10, which is a good solid result. He was fighting well and truly inside the top 5 for a good period of the Calder Park round, and he's continuing that good form right about now. And what's he at the moment? He's about a quarter of a tenth away from Liccardo, who's from Ben Hall, and about a half a tenth away from Dane Liccardo. So not doing too bad a job at the moment. Very, very solid, consistent, and he'll take a top 10 here.
Yeah, and that's a good run for Ryan as well. Obviously, last time around he was subbing in for Ben Hall, so he had a little bit of support from CRA. I'm not sure that's extended across to the rest of the season for him yet. I know there was discussions about him joining a few teams before he eventually registered. Actually, I'm not sure he has registered as of yet, but I know he has been talking about bringing some of his esports into Supercars, which makes sense. They're a pretty strong Dev Series team. They're definitely got the equipment and I suppose the base to make a move up into Supercars as well. But it'll be interesting to see what sort of assistance he's gotten this time around, and whether maybe that reflects a little bit, or maybe just the track not suiting him as well as Calder Park, because it's a similar lap time around here, but there is a bit more complexity in this lap than there is at Calder Park.
The checkered flag is out. Brenton Foley was the first man across the line there with the checkered flag. He was fractionally away from getting a new lap, but unfortunately for him, he's just come up just a little bit short, so he's 6.5 tenths down on the pole time, so 10th place. So that's actually a bit of a much better investment compared to how his Calder Park round went. It was, by his standards, it was quite disastrous, Rhodey, I think, is what the most polite thing we can say about it at the moment. Hans Brunswick's unfortunately just been a little bit balked, I think, by Lockie Lock, who's on his own flying lap. So there's no rhyme or reason for why Lock needs to get out of the way here if he's on a fly up. But that's a surprise packet. So looking at the grid at the moment, you've got the 2 CRE engineering Mustangs on the front row. Then you've got the 2 HSP, Fuchs HSP dealer team cars on the second row. So that's quite a surprise that I wasn't expecting to see.
Yeah, to have them out-qualifying the factory cars. Well, actually, they are all 4 factory cars.
And Ryan Cox actually just jumped up to 5th. Sorry, Rhodey. He actually just leapfrogged up to 5th place at the death there. So he's leapfrogged 4 cars there, gone from 9th to 5th. So that's a very, very impressive jump in the latter stages of at the death in qualifying, I should say.
Yeah. So in the end, he's actually managed to out-qualify Brendan Ross, who's currently in 6th. He's the 3rd of the Pixel cars, but also out-qualified Tim Redmond, who's currently sitting in 7th. So as we mentioned, tight grid this year, and Tim Redmond, we picked at the start of the season, championship contender, easy top 2, but qualifying, the gaps aren't massive between him and Will, and to be fair, Tim might still be getting to grips with the strength and the abilities of his new setup, but he's only half a second off, and that's, put him 3 rows further back than where Will is.
Yeah, and on top of that, I could see why Lockie Lock actually decided to press on with the lap and didn't let Hans Brunswick through. It says 11th on the screen there, but I think there's a driver that's just dropped out of the server, which was Dane Liccardo.
Yeah.
So Lockie Locke's actually going to start 12th in all of this, and he was 15th. So, not ceding track to Hans Brunswick. Actually, as to his benefit, he's gained 3 spots in all of that.
Yeah, and that's the thing with qualifying. Everyone's an equal in qualifying. Doesn't matter if you're qualifying to try and get onto the pole or qualifying just to be not the last one on the grid. You do have the same right to the track as long as you're on a timed lap, which Locke was. So Hans would be a little bit frustrated, but it's just how the roll of the dice sometimes in qualifying. Yeah,
that's exactly how it goes sometimes. So the top 10 there in qualifying based on the time. So you got Will Devenish, Curtis Egmanis on the front row of the grid. Then the 2 Fuchs HSP dealer team cars, Burke and Brunswick. Ryan Cox, who jumped up to 5th. Brendan Ross to 6th. And then you had Tim Redmond in 7th. And then I believe Dane Liccardo was 8th with Ben Hall 9th and Brenton Foley in the 10. Top 15 cars covered by under a second. Lewis Wedding was just fractionally outside of a second off the pole time. And then the whole field actually spread by 1.7 seconds. There's a few guys down the back just struggling a little bit. Actually, it was both the Beyond Racing Young Guns that finished in 19th and 20th respectively. But of course, Zach Brown, the only man not to post a time. But of course, he has got the rear of grid start, which thankfully for him, he only has to serve once at this round. He doesn't have to serve it again. But it's a bit of a difficult one for him to serve because there's only the one qualifying session for the overall night. It's 3 races back to back to back with progressive grids. So he's really got to find a way to march his way forward from here.
Yeah. Although crucially, he was showing some good pace in practice, and obviously, we haven't seen him racing this year yet in a supercar, but if we go back to how his pace went last year, definitely some strong performances in Dev Series. And if we compare that to some of the guys he's racing against this year, the likes of Bailey Hall, Nathan Higginson, technically Braps in the field as well, actually, and a couple of the guys that were up the pointy end of Dev Series, he's going to find himself. Well, actually, to be fair, he's going to be racing a pair of them off the start of the race with Nathan Higginson and Bailey Hall just in front of him, and then Brap qualified 13th, and I think there's 1 or 2 Dev Series guys a little bit higher, or pre-3 last year's Dev Series graduates. That's the way I was looking for.
Graduates. That's probably the
right
right
word.
word.
A little bit higher up the grid again as sort of benchmark. But I think it's at least he's going to have Higginson and Hall to race with. And I imagine for the pair of them, they're probably a little bit faster than their qualifying pace reveals. Bailey was definitely a little higher in the standings at the start of qualifying, but then maybe didn't quite get the lap that everyone else got to slip himself back down the order. But he'll be pushing up through. And Higginson, he's always out there to have a crack. So whether he's going to actually gain any net positions by the end of the race remains to be seen, but he'll definitely out there fighting for positions like the last lap of the race anyway.
Yeah, he certainly will. They'll be fighting out there for as long as they can possibly fight for every point that's available. Actually, speaking of points, good segue. Let's have a look at the driver standings with thanks to CRE Electrical. A little bit of a different graphic for you this year that shows you where everybody's positioned. And as we talked about earlier, it's a very tight championship, despite the fact that Will Devenish has taken the pole position from round 1. He's actually taken the pole position for round 2 as well. So that graphic would actually read 2 for next week or for the next round. But he did win both races after surviving some onslaughts at Calder Park too. So he has a perfect 300 points. But behind him, it's a 3-way tie for second place overall. And that's unfortunately for Dane. It's by virtue of the post-race penalty that he received for a collision with a back marker, which was, it wasn't intentional contact, but it was contact nonetheless. And he was penalised for that. So that's put him back level on points with Noah Turra and Ryan Cox, all on 258 points apiece. It does go back to Dane on the count back because he has a second place. Noah has 2/3, Ryan has a second, and then both Ryan and Dane have a fourth. But Dane, of course, got his second place first. So that's just how that pans out for the how it's structured there. Leonard Grossel, he won't be here tonight, but we hopefully will see him next week. We don't have a record of what his car and team name is going to be moving forward. I'm led to believe the car number will probably be 666, if anything's to be indicated by from his Dev Series 1 and only appearance. And we just don't know what the team name will be just yet. Then you've got the man on the second row of the grid tonight in Curtis Egmanis is 6th from Brendan Ross. Kane Gray or NZ Snipes, he's doing pretty well. He'd be happy to see himself in the top 10. And then Lewis Wedding makes it 2 of the Real Holden Pixel Racing Team cars in the top 10. And then Bailey Hall, despite the fact he's going to be starting down the back of the grid for tonight's first race, he's actually in the top 10. So we've got 6 Holdens and 4 Fords in the top 10 there, Rody.
Yeah, and something else we can talk about, it won't be as covered as officially from the broadcast angle, but something that was organised at the start of the season between the 2 biggest teams, actually. No, they are the 2 biggest teams. CRE Race Engineering and Beyond Racing Team, both with backing and support from electricians. Obviously, CRE Race Engineering being backed by Camrich Electrical, Beyond Racing Team being backed by Beyond Electrical, who are both also sponsors of Supercars. I've decided they're going to run the Sparky Showdown between the pair of them. They each nominated 6 drivers, or to be fair, I nominated 6 drivers for each of them. I grabbed the 6 that I thought would match up pretty well. And I'm keeping track of the points that they accrue as drivers throughout the year. And that at the end of the season, whichever team of 6 turns out to be the better, whichever of the 2 teams of 6s, my head was going somewhere. Anyway, whichever of the 2 performs the worst will be buying a 6-pack for the team that performs the best. I'm not sure if it's a 6-pack for the team or a 6-pack for each team's members. But at the moment, to give you an outline of what we're looking at, CRE Engineering, CRE Performance Racing, and CRE Answer Motorsport are the 3 2-driver teams scoring for CRE. And Beyond Racing Team Tanner for Beyond Racing Young Guns, and then obviously Beyond Racing are scoring for Beyond Racing. At the moment, it's a 400-point lead, or about a 400-point lead to CRE Engineering by virtue of all their drivers racing at round 1 versus Tim Redmond obviously missing out at round 1. So early lead to CRE, but because it really revolves around all 6 drivers and there's some easy, shoe-ins for good results there, the Will and the Tim. But there's also some very much some liabilities. Like we're seeing tonight, Nathan Higgins and actually Bailey Hall as well based off of qualifying, not doing as strongly as we thought they might. And Dan Liccardo potentially one that might not score too well for CRE. That said, Steve Boko is not here tonight at all, so there'll be no points coming out of the other half of CRE Performance Racing. That's going to swing the balance back the other way. But we'll keep a track of that as the season goes. And obviously later in the season, if the points are tied, it'll be quite exciting to see. Maybe there's some team games later in the season to try and get themselves a 6-pack.
Yeah, well, if it was a 6-pack for everybody in the team, then that would be great. But if it's a 6-pack to share between the team, that might be a little bit problematic considering geographical separation of a few people. But we'll debate that one when we get a bit closer to seeing what the result's going to be. Let's flip over the page. We'll have a quick look at the team's point standings because this is how they sit. As you said, it's a good segue just to see where all the teams are sitting. So you can see up there the CRE Engineering boys are well out in front at the moment, ahead of the Sister Mustang team, which is Amped Up Racing by CRE, and then Holden Pixel Racing Team in 3rd. So there's 2 teams there that, of course, are tied. So Beyond Racing Young Guns at 258. They scored that between them at the last round. And then Ben Hall's little team, Luke McHugh Racing, with I think Ryan Cox piloted that car as a substitute and scored 258 points in his own right. So that's why it's so high up the grid. And you can see there we've actually got a little bit of a new feature for 2023. We've got the drivers that are comprising the teams below the team names, so you don't lose sight of who's in each team. And you can see there about 2 or 3 of the teams have got a little asterisk next to their name as well, which signifies that at some point in the season they have had a substitute driver come into the team and score points for the team. So as much as it's in, like for example, if you go to Luke McHugh Racing there in 7th place, you can see it's a privateer team just for Ben Hall, but he's actually got a little asterisk on the other side of the pipe. That says that he, of course, had Ryan Cox substitute for him. And then in the case of PBF Race Engineering, there's Brenton Foley and Zach Brown, but they've also had Brap substitute in that car and score some points at Calder Park as well. So that's just a little bit of an update and a little bit more of an insight just to give everybody a bit of an idea of how the points are being scored and who's contributing those points. It may not necessarily just be the 2 drivers or the 1 driver in the case of a privateer team that's contributing the points. But at least this keeps a bit of an idea out there for everybody to see that substitute drivers are indeed contributing to the team's points standings in some form or another.
Absolutely.
All right, not too long to go here before we get ready for race number 1 of the evening. 18 laps the distance, so it's a little bit longer than the Dev Series race. They're 50-kilometre sprints, so the Dev Series round was 15 laps, 3 lots of 15 laps. This is 3 lots of 18 laps, so 40k sprint to 50k sprint racing. We'll have a look at the race facts as the race drags on a bit, Rhodey, but as you pointed out earlier in the piece, the tyres, they are going to be the limiting factor in this. It's not fuel, it is tyres.
I understand there are 3 strategies, or at least from my perception, the 3 strategies are going to play out. Rather than see soft tyre runners that drive to a number, we'll see soft tyre runners that consider a pit stop, or, and perhaps the more likely, so the second option, we're going to see hard tyre runners out there. Because the softs at Supercars pace will not last 18 laps. They've lasted 15 laps with Dev Series at Dev Series pace. So, they're working to tyre wear numbers as a soft tyre runner. Otherwise, there are a couple of teams that have definitely explored the option for hards. I don't know how many of them committed to that yet. Whether the practice runs we saw during the week actually lead into that at all, I'm not sure. But we'll start to see that during the race, I suppose, to a degree. But that said, drivers that are saving on softs aren't going to be too much faster than drivers that are pounding around on hards. So
No.
The difference might not be too visible for us.
And
Except the one thing I will say, though, I've remembered, we will see the sidewalls.
Yes, that is a new feature for 2023, that the sidewalls on the cars do denote the tyres that are in use. So, Rhodey, let's have a quick run through this grid because it's a very short lap.
Alrighty, so starting from pole is Will Devonish, CRE Engineering, the first of the 2 cars with Curtis Agmanis alongside him in the 51. Third is another 2 team pairing of Lockie Burke for his first round for the Fuchs HSB dealer team. Alongside him is his teammate in Hans Brunswick. Then starting from 5th position is Ryan Cox for Castrol Racing. He'll be making his full-time debut in his own car in the not-too-distant future, with Brennan Ross alongside him in 6th for the Will Holdings Racing team. 7th is Tim Redmond, his first round of the year for Beyond Racing, with Dane Liccardo behind him in 8th position. 9th is Ben Hall for Olympic Q Racing. That's the second time we've seen this car, but the first time Ben's been in it this season, with Brendan Foley sitting in the top 10 right in the session there. 11th is Daniel Cox for Sydney Motorsport, good qualifying for Coxie, with Lockie in 12th and racing by CRE. 13th is Pete Throw, the other good Beyond Racing Mustangs, with Rapp in 4th, filling in Phil Boat for PBF Motorsport. 15th is NZ Snipes for Beyond Racing Team Hanifa, with Lewis Wedding in 16th position in the other Pixel Holden Racing Team car. 17th is Cheese, the second of the Beyond Racing Team Hanifa Mustangs, with Cam Rutledge in 18th for Siri Anson Motorsport. 19th is Bailey Hall, the first of Beyond Racing Young Guns. Alongside him is his teammate Nathan Higginson. And starting from the back as a result of the longest waited for penalty in ASR history is Zach Brown, PBF Engineering. That car was racing last round at the hands of Brad, but this is the first time Zach is in his car this season.
Certainly is the first time for Zach Brown in this car, so he's been in Supercars before as a wild card, but this is his first full-time main game start. Compare that to the man who is on the pole, who makes his 100th race start in ASR Supercars competition this week in Will Devonish. So set for a start here. Race 3 of the championship for 2023. The first race of a Sydney triple header from Sydney Motorsport Park. And away we go for the first of 18 laps, and a poor start by both the front 2 cars on the grid. It's a 4-wide drag race all the way to the line here. Contact between one of the HSP dealer team cars and Turbo. Then one of the Pixel cars has gone off in the weeds at the back. It looks like, I'm not sure if that's Brendan Ross or it's Lewis Wedding. One of the 2 has gone absolutely sailing off into turn 1. Got a lot of work to do, but it's Lockie Burke who's popped out with the whole shot into turn 1, and he's streeting away from the field. Behind him, Will Devonish having to fight tooth and nail to keep Redmond, his teammate, behind, and Liccardo.
Yeah, with the start Lockie Burke's got, I have a feeling maybe they know something at HSP that even the CRE don't, with the tyre strat, with the pace that Berkey's pushing on with. But yeah, Will Devonish currently in 2nd, Tim Redmond, Curtis Agman, Stan Liccardo in the train behind him. Ryan Cox is pretty comfortably in 6th. as a result of all that happened at the start. I say that actually Curtis Sigmanis Turmo around, actually. I'm not sure whether the system was attributed there from Liccardo, what happened there, but he's lost a bucket of spots now as well.
Yeah, we'll go back and take a look at that in just a few seconds. Let's have a quick look on the replay here about what happened to Brendan Ross. So this is the one that we picked up. Where was he? He was trying to turn in for the corner there, and there were cars all the way there as well. So did he make the fence? Oh, so close. I reckon he's avoided a contact with the fence there. But for him, that's a very, very unusual start to proceedings for Brendan Ross, and he's plumb last right now.
Yeah, so he's got a bit of work to do, but also what it probably means for him is it puts him outside the window of having the feeling the need to race, and so he can actually solely focus on his tyre strategy, which might come to play a little later in the race, see kind of the car around. I think that was...
it's Rutledge. It's Cam Rutledge. Yes. He's in the fence. So we were cycling around just to see what was going on there, and that's at turn 4 and 5. So he's unfortunately found himself in a little bit of trouble there. So the CRE Motorsport Commodore, who is he locked in combat here? Looks like he was just ahead of Nathan Higginson and Cheese, and do this all on his own. Maybe a little bit of contact from Higginson there, I think. Maybe a bit of nose to tail contact. Maybe a move that wasn't quite on there. And Rutledge loses a couple more spots and progresses, hopefully to try and progress back through the field. Now this is the interesting one. You picked this one up earlier as well. We're going to try and see if we can go back and pick up what happened to Turmo here, Rhodey, because as you said, he was sort of top a couple of half a dozen cars, had a very poor start off the front row of the grid with Will Devonish, and you suspect may have been turned late on lap 1. We're just looking to see if we can search for that replay and see if we can get it. And it looks like it was up at the final couple of corners. So actually we do have it on the replay. So let's bring that one up and see what went on here. So he was in behind Redmond and going through a lot. He's got a little bit loose through the final corner, sort of left Liccardo with nowhere to go.
Yeah, okay. I figured as much. With the way CRE works, I wouldn't see the CRE drivers turning each other unless it was absolutely necessary. In this case, yeah, Dane had nowhere to go. So as a result of all that, coming back out of the replays, Dane Liccardo currently sitting in 4th, who I missed earlier. He got past Ryan Cox in the last couple of laps. Actually, Brendan Foley doing quite well as well as a result of everything that's happened with the other couple of cars this one. He's currently in 6th position. He's got Ben Hall and Lockie Locke and Daniel Cox up behind him.
I'll have a look and see who the big movers are out of all of this, because of course Turmo's one of the ones that's moved down several spots. He's moved down 11 positions because of the issue that he had at the last couple of corners. Let's see who the big movers are. I think at the moment it's probably 6 positions gained for Lewis Wedding out of everybody else. So he started 16th. He's currently inside the top 10, and at least 2 of those positions have been because of his teammate going off the road, and the other one that was Turmo at the last corner. So 2 of those have come through attrition. 4 of those have been just by probably a bit of smart driving. And actually I think another one because of, I think, Hans Brunswick, who's behind him on the road at the moment in the sister team car, who had, I think, was involved in that sort of sandwich moment between 4 cars trying to fit into turn 1 on lap 1.
Yeah, and Brunswick's got some strong track. He's been recovering from his early off, and we know Hans Brunswick knows his way around tyre strategy. He was quite strong in his appearance in the Dev Series coming up to 2 years ago now, at the start of the season, where tyre strategy was the name of the game and managing that tyre wear. So Brunswick a bit stronger pace of the car than Wedding, and we know that they're probably pretty similar on car pace if given equal cars. Probably Wedding having a slight edge due to slightly bigger experience in the sim, but it doesn't really matter at this point because Brunswick seems to be confident on where his tyre wear is at, because he's caught up to Brunswick and actually looking to make a pass at some point in the next couple of corners. Yeah,
turn 2 will be the signal here if he can get his. The car's just a little bit loose going through turn number 1, but he's got enough of a purchase here down the inside at turn 2, and Wedding doesn't fight it. And for Wedding's sake, I think that's probably the smart move. If the car behind the sister car's got pace, let the sister car go, try and pick up as many points as possible, and now just see if he can follow Hans around, pick up some lines, and just stay as close as he can. Hopefully the 2 of them will be able to pull away from Curtis Egmanis, who himself is catching the back of Wedding on the recovery drive from that incident at on lap 1.
Yeah, so Termo's the other one with obviously a recovery drive in mind that we're seeing in the frame. Rossi is actually, he's not last anymore, but he's still got a few spots to gain to really swing back in the picture. But yeah, Termo's the other one to cover. Termo, I've got an idea of the strategy they're running and that he's got a Taiwan number to run to. So he's finding a very tight balance here between running at the pace he wants to be able to get back to where he rightfully feels he should be and to get the tyres to last at the end. So I don't know, with the pace we're seeing from Brunswick versus the pace we're seeing from Manus, does that mean that Hans is going to be tyre questionable? As we say that Hans is actually run wide at turn 2, so that won't help the tyre as much. Yeah,
we've just seen that in the background while we're watching Daniel Cox have a little bit of a nibble at Lockie Lock as well. We saw Brunswick run wide, and that's led Wedding back through. There's actually some great shots coming out of the rear bumper cam here, or the rear boot cam of the Lockie Lock amped up racing by CRE Mustang. Cox is really close, and he's quite strong, I think, under brakes for turn 2, Rody, but he just couldn't quite get enough purchase on the brakes and command enough inside running to really threaten down the inside at 2. But let's see if he can have another go this lap.
Yeah, so he's been having some good running, and again, sort of team play here, all under the big CRE banner. Whether I think it's a case of if Cox had a definitive advantage, the order might be given from up high to swap positions, but at this point I think they've really line up all on pace and strategy. So this is a second
attempt, but again, not really close enough to really threaten. He's got a little bit more side by side this time, but Locke has the high ground. He has the inside for turn number 3, so Cox doesn't want to run the long way around turn 3 at this sort of going, because you're going to be asking a fair bit of the tyres to hang on at that stage. But he's sort of, I think, maybe trying to worry Locke out of the position, and it's not working.
No, and like Locke doesn't maybe have the experience, especially sort of the maturity, I suppose, of Daniel Cox. But Lockie has been around a few seasons of Supercars. Obviously, Dev Series winner last year. He knows how to take, a car popping its nose in all of his mirrors at every given opportunity. And yeah, the pace difference doesn't seem to be too massive. So Lockie's intending to fight this one because I'm guessing the feeling is that this isn't going to come down to tyre life for the pair of drivers and come down to who's on first on the road. So we're just started the halfway lap of this race. So he's got a little bit more time to defend, and obviously with the cars behind him as well, Hans Brunswick has kept spraying and white turn through the last couple of laps, but he's made it through cleanly this time around. But Hans Brunswick, Lewis Wedding and Curtis Manus are also in the window to pop in here. Might make things a bit more busy for Lockie Lock, but we'll see how that goes throughout the race.
Yep, and just ahead of the battle that we were watching with Daniel Cox and Lockie Lock is another little battle going on between the old bull and the young bull, Brent Foley and Ben Hall, who's actually having a really good run here at this race, and he's gnawing away on the back of the 074 PBF Race Engineering Commodore, just like a little beaver just gnawing away on a nut, or a squirrel rather, gnawing away on a nut, just in there every now and again. I'm still here, and he's not letting go.
And maybe some interplay as well that, Foley, one of PBF's GT3 runners, Ben Hall slipped into his Viper the last round out at Bathurst, so maybe a bit of competition striving from there as well. But Ben, not part of PBF officially anymore, but still very much popping in and out and still a friend of the team. And this will be a very good friendly little rivalry here. Foley and Hall have competed a few different times across seasons. Obviously, Ben improving in pace. Foley not quite stagnating, maybe not quite showing the extreme pace of those further ahead. But no, Ben's having a good run, and he's actually got support from one of his Dev Series, not quite stablemates, one of his Dev Series team members at Luke Racing, with Brandon Dostal in the chat cheering him on.
Certainly is, and very, very happy with the performance you can see there from Brandon Dostal in the chat. Good to have you guys along for the ride this evening. Actually, speaking of the battle, it was just a little bit further up the field. 3-car fight. Dane Liccardo, Tim Redmond and Ryan Cox, and it all came to a little bit of a head here on the previous lap. Liccardo's looking, and the second time he's looking, but Redmond has got the line and is defending. And then you see Cox trying to go the highway round the outside, maybe try and put himself into position for turn 3, but couldn't quite make it happen. Back a shot. Looks like Daniel Cox may have come unstuck. There's 2 cars that come unstuck. It's Brunswick and Cox. There's 2 of them around at turn number 2.
And I believe those will be separate incidents.
Yeah, that looks like they were separate incidents. They were 2 separate parts of the track. What's the Atwell Broadcasting replay got in store for us here? Let's have a little bit of a look. So Brunswick, I think, did he... Oh, he's had a big tank slapper. And I'm not sure, I couldn't quite see the other one that was happening there at the time with Daniel Cox. They're both doing... They've actually... Brunswick's done a pretty good job there to get out of the way, I must admit, without re-entering the racing line. So that won't be... that'll be a big tick of approval from stewards for that, for doing a good job. But yeah, I couldn't quite see what the Cox and Lockie Lock incident was just ahead. But you're right, Roddy, definitely two separate incidents.
Yeah, there was wheel-to-wheel contact. I remember seeing as much, so I'm not sure whether that was under fair racing or maybe things getting a little bit too heated between the teammates. But yeah, what it has resulted in is that Lock is still, Lock is still running pretty well fine, running in 8th place, and Daniel Cox now running in 14th.
Yeah, so a bit further down the order. So Cox, you can see on the shot here, he's actually got the second of the PBF Motorsport cars, actually the only one that's in the field tonight. Wrap all over the back of him as well. Zach Brown's made some good progress through the field. He's just ahead of the two of them there in front of Cheese. So for Zach Brown, Cheese, he's driven well, hasn't he? He started 21st and last, and he has made it up to 11th. So he's on the fringes of the top 10 here if he can muster something in the next 6 laps.
Yeah, he's taken advantage of how the race has played out around him as well, with a couple of guys spinning off. But crucially, not many of them are behind him at this point. So he's just been driving a very strong race. I'm curious to know where he's at on tyre life at the back end of this. But yeah, very strong race for Zach Brown, as you can see.
Yeah, there he goes. He's actually pulling away from Cheese as we're going on board with the 747 Mustang here. So in a Team Tanifer sandwich right now is Zach Brown, and the top 10 beckons. Actually, it says he's 12th there at the moment, so I'm just wondering whether there's been quite a reshuffling of the order. I think there was. I think that there's maybe a minor timing glitch that has just upset proceedings just a little bit. For what we thought he was in 11th, he's actually in 12th. The timing actually correcting itself, so apologies there. But still, very, very handy result to move from 21st to 12th, and 11th place very much there for the taking. And we did notice as well, thanks to the guys in the live chat, there was Rip A.B. Hall from Jesse Bennett. He wasn't sure which one it was. We can tell you it's Bailey Hall. He's unfortunately out of this race after completing 8 laps, so we're not quite sure what's gone on there for the Beyond Racing Young Guns number 38, but he is unfortunately out of business.
Absolutely, so that will obviously have an impact on the points, but also that will mean that Bailey will be starting at the back for race 2, and hopefully if there was an issue of some sort, he has got that sorted, or we'll have that sorted in time for the second race.
Hopefully so. Now Ben Hall's finally found a way through on Brenton Foley, so the continual gnawing on the back of the 074 Commodore has finally paid off. He moves up to position number 6, so great return there. 3 spots gained from where he started this race. So again, a lot of drivers just driving very smartly, very sensibly, taking advantage of how the race is unfolding. And speaking of how the race unfolds, we didn't bring this up a little bit earlier, we bring up our race facts with thanks to Daniel Cox Design. As we've said, the tyres that are in play are the hard and the soft compound. You can use one or the other, but the tyre wear is the big factor here. It is not the fuel. Like, you can get away with about 80 to 85 litres of the BP fuel in these cars, but you can't get away with your tyre management. So it's really a question of how best do you manage this race? Do you go out hard? Have you got a setup that can manage the soft tyres? Do you need to use the hard tyres? You talked about one of the strategies, Rody, being pitting part way through. I personally think pitting suicide in a race this short. You're going to be well down the back of the field. It's a 40k per hour speed limit for the pits. You need everybody to react to what you're doing to really make any meaningful gain.
Either that or a safety car, but yeah.
Yes.
I was also talking about the strats. I had to do quick through the field. If I remember my tyre compound colours correct, I believe the entire field maybe on the hard tyre, but are they on soft? They're all on the yellow compound. I know that much, which I might actually know. They might actually be at the soft tyre.
I'm looking at the lap times. Like the lap time that Will Devenish did at a 58.110, clearly to me has got to be a soft tyre lap on full fuel for the fastest lap of the race. Ironically, the only person actually yet to break in under the 60-second barrier is Cam Rutledge, and he's only 0.081 of a second off his best lap from breaking into under the 1 minute barrier for his best lap of the race. So just one more to go, but Cam again running his own race, and of course he's been involved in an early collision with the wall up at turn 4 and 5, which hasn't bitten as many victims as I thought it was going to bite so far, Rody.
Yeah, so we've still obviously got 2 races left. I'm going to run some wood to touch before we talk too much more about
Please
cars
do.
finding balls. But yeah, it has been fairly clean through there, and I think because the advantage of that chicane is it's not turn 1 or turn 2, it's turn 4 and turn 5. So you've got a chance to suffer.
Oh, Brown. Sorry, Rody. Sorry,
Yep.
Rody. Zach Brown. The PBF cars are both in. So calling your bluff. Brent Foley. Oh, he's got it all locked up ahead of Zach Brown. Did he get it stopped before the line in time? This is interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
This is not something I knew of. All I saw in the team discussion was someone throwing up the idea of have we considered hard tyres. I will say credit though, Zach Brown, he learnt from Bathurst on last weekend where he completely buggered up his teammate John McDonald in trying to double stack in the pit bay. He's actually done it properly this time. He's learnt from his team boss at in GD3 in Lewis Wedding in how to do that, execute that properly. But yeah, this puts him to the back, and look, I have to agree, unless we're going to see some pits or some blown tyres at the back end of this race, they have kind of boned themselves because they're both now a lap down.
They're both a lap down. They're 19th and 20th on the road, and that's where they'll be starting the next race if something drastic does not unfold in the next few minutes. So have they picked up on something that nobody else has picked up on, or have they made a catastrophic mistake with how their strategy plays out? They're the only ones to 2 of the lane so far, and there's only 2 laps to go. So I'm wondering if they've got a setup that maybe is a little bit more aggressive. Maybe they were hoping to gain a little bit more than what they were over the course of a race, and it hasn't paid off. That's a real head scratcher, that one.
Yeah,
That's had major impacts too, Rody, because that's promoted NZ Snipes into the top 10 because he was outside the 10 with Zach Brown bearing down on him, but Brent Foley was 7th, so that's moved another top 10 finish, and we've actually just realised it's a very short race because Will Devonish has taken a checkered flag. Sorry, Will, we didn't actually pick that one up, that you had crossed the line first because everything was still going on down the field, but he's won his 100th race, his 100th race start, so that's a fantastic achievement for Will Devonish. With Lockie Burke, great result for him in 2nd place, Tim Redmond home in 3rd, but yeah, the real head-scratching is starting to go on here right now as to what on earth have the PBF Race Engineering stable manufactured.
I'd like to be able to tell you, but I have no idea what the plan is either for the Supercars drivers. That's the one avenue of the team I try and stay out of, because for me, the Supercar side of things is very much Foley's and Phil's thing. So we don't really have the time for me to do, an IRL thing and have 3 outspin races to go and find out what happens. So we might find out, at the end of the night, depending on what we do, depending how the interviews play out. But yeah, no, you're right. That's a real head scratcher. So to go off the rest of the order, Dane Liccardo comes home in 4th, which is a strong run for Dane in the end, just missing out on the podium. 5th for Ben Hall, very good run for him as well. He made a few spots at the end there.
He did.
Lockie Lock finishes in 6th, so that's a gain of 2 spots over where we last saw him, and that is because of some of the cars that are falling behind him. Lewis Wedding finishes 17, picked up some spots as well. Termo ended up finishing 8th, which is a good recovery. Ryan Coxon then was 9th. He was racing Ben Hall.
He faded
the last
late.
corner.
He faded late in that one, I think, as well, because
Yeah,
he was dropped off the back of the battle between Redmond and Liccardo, and then sort of fell into the clutches of Ben Hall and co.
He was passed by Ben Hall, and I think his tyres were probably on their last legs as he came to the last corner, because the car dropped into a lazy spin and actually the car dropped sideways in front of the 2 lap cars of PBF Race Engineering. So that actually slowed them all down a bit more, and that's why Cox has finished that far down.
And
NZ
Snipes got the last position in the 10. That's actually really good for him because he backs that up with a 10. He had another top 10 finish at Calder Park, so that's 2 on the bounce for him, so he'll be pretty pleased with that. And then you've got Daniel Cox and Cheese, Hans Brunswick and Brapp. Brendan Ross recovered after that major off-track moment at turn 1, lap 1 to finish 15th, so that's a pretty respectable recovery drive for him considering how far in the weeds he was. And then you had Cam Rutledge, Pete Thrower, Higginson, Foley and Brown, with Bailey Hall the only driver not to finish the race. But yeah, I'm as mystified as you are right now, Foley. Sorry, Rody, not Foley. The strange part is it's unlike us to miss the finish of a race too, because that was such a head-scratching moment that happened so late in the piece. we just weren't prepared for it, and we just completely missed the fact that Will Devonish was in the process of crossing the line. So I think he might be a bit filthy with us after this, Rhodey, because of what happened and us missing him cross the line on his 100th start.
Possibly, yeah. So yeah, it was just it was a baffler. Jesse Bennett in the chat reckons it was a fuel consumption thing. Have put a polite ping in the team Discord to ask what's happened, and they'll get back to me probably when they can. But fuel's a possibility, but I don't know with when the tires are the gamble. I'm not sure it's really worth playing on the fuel too much. Yeah, you want to bring some weight out of the car to help where the tires are at, but you have to be pretty critical on the tire wear to consider running out of fuel as a better option. So actually, we've just had Foley in the chat mentioning that the tires went, which isn't necessarily a surprise. We have seen, and I'm not having a go at it. I mean, I quite enjoy that strat as well. But we do know that Foley is one of the drivers who does seem to imbue a bit more tire wear than the rest of the field on average. Granted, we haven't seen Foley sideways for quite a few months now, but yeah, that driving style does tend to, and the setups do tend to bring a little more tire wear to the picture. So I don't know whether PBF are going to have to look at running a hard tire for the next race, and in the time they've got between races, cranking that setup in a direction that turns the soft tire into a quality tire, or sorry, the hard tire into a quality tire, or what? I don't know, but yeah, with that being tire, I don't know, because I mean they were running pretty comfortably. I mean, Zach, I can understand running out of tire. He picked up 10 spots, but Foley's running, I think, pretty comfortably to sort of where we expect him to be running. So yeah, there's something that's going to have to change between races 1 and 2 for PBF.
Yeah, I think Darren Loughlin's called it perfectly in the chat. Foley's minor habit of sliding everywhere has not paid off this time, and I think he's precisely right. I mean, we know Foley's got a penchant for going sideways, and unfortunately for him, there's a few people hot on his coattails that are trying to do the same thing. Looking at you, Nathan Higginson. And yeah, maybe it hasn't paid off this time. I think maybe they went for too much camber, because the tyre that goes, I believe, Reddy, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think it's the front right that is the real limiting factor. So if the camber on that front right tyre, or on the front rack, so to speak, is too aggressive, and they've gone to try and play it for the corners, then they've got a problem. They need to stand the camber of the tyres up. They need to make some pressure adjustments or whatever they need to do to get those cars back on track. But for both cars to fall victim of each other on the same lap is a pretty major concern.
Yeah, and actually I got a bit more full story just then. Foley's tyre, Foley had actually lost his tyre. And Zach was in the red. So Zach, running the same car and probably running similar pace, didn't want to risk running another lap or two. So that was the decision why they both pitted on the same lap. But yeah, Foley did actually lose his tyre. So I imagine he lucked out, and I didn't actually notice too much of a time lose outside of when he was in the pit lane. So he must have lucked out and had that go like coming through or coming out of the last corner at a really lucky spot rather than like halfway through the lap, because it wasn't obvious to us that he was dropping off the pace until we saw him pitting.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it was completely unexpected. Like, we saw them coming through the final corner and everything looked pretty normal. So that's what sort of piqued my interest up, is the minute that Brown, who was the car that was the second of the two PBF cars in the queue, and was the one that sort of started moving towards the lane first, and then Foley, who was a couple of spots further ahead, sort of followed. That sort of looked, and I thought, hang on a minute, what's going on here? This is completely unexpected. So we'll hopefully they'll be able to tidy that up in between races and get themselves out there again. So we've got a very, very quick 5-minute warm-up session that's going on at the moment in preparation for race number 2. A little bit of a condensed program through the beginning of the night, just to keep the racing moving along, because of course we have still got the first demonstration laps of Gen 3 to come in the next couple of, actually probably about 40 minutes time. I think we're looking for to see that happen. So the program just needs to be kept moving along. So there is a little bit of time left for that demonstration to take place, and then race 3 will happen straight after that. We have got a few cars that are exhibiting some on-track activity at the moment. Bailey Hall's one of them. Of course, he was out in race number 1 very, very early at lap 8. So he needs to get some more laps in the books here. and there's a couple of drivers that are just sort of leaving and arriving back in the service. So we've still got time to wait for, I think, for Ben Hall. And then there's one more driver that we're just waiting to see if he's going to make it back into the server for this second race of the evening.
Yeah, so just checking the chat in Discord, Bailey Hall mentioned having to restart his PC. So something wasn't playing ball, but he's obviously been able to do that because he's.
I was about to say, it looks like, I'm not sure if I've just lost Rody there for a second. I possibly may have lost Rody just very, very temporarily. I'm not sure what's going on there. Just sort of cut off to... it's just been cut off by for a few seconds. So hopefully we'll see him back in just a few moments' time. Actually, it's a valid point that Rody was raising. Hopefully when he pops back in, he will be able to speak again. But he just mentioned about computers and the restarting of Bailey Hall's machine to get himself going again. The important thing that I think we need to pick up on things like that is moving forward. We've got a message today in Steam. Now, Steam, of course, is the platform that we use to run the Automobilista program. And there's it's been a very reliable platform, but on top of that, the broadcast machines here at Outlaw Broadcasting for many, many years have been Windows 7 because it's been such a stable platform for Steam, and we've tailored and done a lot of work to make sure that the program runs and behaves itself as best as possible, because back in the day, the early going, there was plenty of horror stories around what was going on with Windows 10 and graphics drivers being continually overridden and updated and all sorts of things, but a lot of those have been solved in the last sort of couple of years. But what we're finding now is that Steam actually today alerted saying that Steam will stop working on Windows 7 in 248 days, so that's January next year. So I guess that's just a bit of a shout out to everybody that's got a PC at home that may still have Windows 7 installed, as Daniel Cox does a little pirouette on the front straight there. I think he probably wouldn't want to see that happening on the broadcast, but I guess as a heads up for those people that are still running Windows 7 and Steam, you have actually got until January next year to get yourself a new PC. Ready?
I am back. Yes. Yeah. I try to multitask too much, and my computer, much like my brain, occasionally needs a break for a bit. So, I am back now. But interesting reports coming through. Actually, I was looking at the chat. I've got a couple of PMs from drivers at Beyond, which might explain why we didn't see a variety of tyre strat in race 1. Is that the server had limited them all to soft tyres, which would explain maybe why PBF had what happened to them, but at the same time, I think the strategy for PBF was focused on a hard tyre setup. But the fact that a couple of drivers noticed it means that I think we're a few teams, and I'm not going to out them if their race strategy very much depends on using the hard tyre at some point tonight. But the few drivers that contacted me about the hard tyres were probably looking at using the hard tyre at some point tonight. So we will actually probably see the hard tyre running in races 2 or 3.
Yeah, so it looks like one of the things that we've had to do this year with regards to the game, especially with having the ability with tyres to have different sidewalls and stuff, is have to actually make the sets unlimited, which for the hard and soft tyre, it does cause a few little gremlins with what you qualify on is what we expect you to start on, but it looks like a few drivers have had some issues with the not being able to change to the tyre that they wanted to change to, having started on, maybe qualified on a hard, and maybe it's locked back into a soft tyre, which is not something we'd be expecting to see. So we're just making a little change on the fly here and seeing how that goes, and with a bit of luck, we'll be back in business in the next few minutes.
Yeah, and also a final update, thanks to Sleepy Anarchy, which is Darren Lognan, who is IRL mate with Bailey Hall in the chat. Bailey's issue was a pedal issue. So it went to 100%. I'm not sure which pedal, but I think any pedal going to 100% mid-race is not ideal, because either you effectively have no brakes, or you have no engine at all, or you have no acceleration by virtue of having locked on brakes. So that would explain why we saw him leave mid-race, but hopefully he will have that sorted now as well. So
Yeah, it looks like Dane
Yeah.
Liccardo is the only man that we're waiting on to jump back into the server as well, and then we will be underway. Actually, one of the other things that we had to do with the server at ASR to allow individual tyre changes, like they do in supercars, like you can change left sides, right sides, you can change 3 tyres or 1 tyre, depending on what you want to do for pit stop wise. That's one of the many configuration changes this year, and maybe it's just looks like it's had an unintended side effect. So that'll be something that I'm sure the ASR crew will tidy up in the off in the downtime between rounds, I should say, and with a bit of luck, we'll be right to go in a little bit for the next round. That should be up and running. Queensland Raceway is the next round of the championship, and I'm led to believe, Rhodey, memory serves me correctly, if I go and check out our calendar, that's actually a permanent hard tyre round. So there will be no soft tyre in play for the next round of the championship.
And that's probably not a bad round for drivers. I know drivers aren't a fan of using the hard tyre when they don't want to, and I know some drivers aren't a fan of QR. So for those drivers who fall into both camps, they'll be having a right old time. But of the tracks to have a hard tyre on, QR is probably one of the better ones. One of the things that sucks about a hard tyre as a driver is that you've got less grip when it comes to going around a corner, but there's not too many heavily gripped corners as such at QR. Turn 1 and turn 2 are quite quick, but the rest of them are relatively slow hairpins or 90-degree corners. So you won't really notice it too much at QR. The only perhaps concern is getting the acceleration out of the corner with the potentially slightly limited lateral or longitudinal grip. But yeah, I think for the drivers there won't be too much of a difference to the usual at QR. And yeah, compared to tonight, it puts them comfortably in a window where they can drive the cars as hard as they want to, which will be a bit of a relief after the tyre conservation game they're playing tonight.
Well, it'll be interesting looking at the calendar for Queensland Raceway. It's a 2-race format. Which is a slightly different format to Calder Park, where we had the top 10 shootout and the 2 90-kilometre races with a progressive grid. This one's actually 2 80-kilometre distance races, but I'm not sure if there's there won't be a top 10 shootout, clearly. It's not listed on there, but I'm not 100% sure if there's a second qualifying or not. I'm led to believe there will be, but I do need to get that confirmed because it's the same race format for Barbagallo in round number 4, which is a 2 80-kilometre races, but that also includes a night race, very similar to what we ran last year in the twilight at Barbagallo Raceway. So the next couple of rounds coming up, Queensland Raceway on May the 19th, and then June the 9th for Barbagallo at Wanneroo. So, and of course, the development series rounds will be the week prior.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So I believe they will have their own separate qualifying sessions just based off the point we obviously did last year, but we'll get that confirmed. But that'll be a good one as well if that does come into play, because it gives drivers opportunity that, as we mentioned, we mentioned with the penalty that Zach served in race 1, it very much, actually infected his entire night, as opposed to if he'd had it next round where if things go as we believe they will be, it would only actually have an effect on the first race because he'd be able to re-qualify and reset himself for race 2, as opposed to tonight where drivers like Bailey Hall, or like Zach Brown, or like Brenton Foley, or like Brendan Ross to a degree actually as well, who's starting this race from 15th, very much race 1 goes bad, it affects your entire night and you've got to try and build it back from there.
That's right. That's the big real caveat, isn't it, with regards to these progressive grid races. If your race 1 goes really bad, you are chasing your tail for the whole entire night. There's no qualms about it. And it's very easy to slip into a very bad mindset, I think, isn't it, Rhodey? That's probably something that we've touched on quite a lot, the mental aspect of sim racing and just in racing in general. When it's not going for you, or it's not going for you, and it's chasing your tail, it feels like it's just this massive burden you can't get off your shoulders, and as such it becomes very easy to slip into like a not very good mental state, and it's very difficult to get people out of, and that's when you need sort of people around you that tell you, chin up, you don't need to think of it this way, focus on the positives, not on the negatives, and those sorts of things. And that's the kind of thing that everybody needs someone like that in their corner. And I know for a fact with the most recent state round that happened up at Winton. Dane Liccardo, obviously, for those that are in the know, actually ran in the saloons for the very, very first time, and had his fair share of dramas, but the positives of his overall first weekend on the racetrack far outweighed anything that was negative, and on top of that, the negatives were out of his control with mechanical failure. That's not in your control. So, and he saw the picture in that, and they're the sorts of people that you need to have in your corner to be able to help you step through those sorts of situations. So, in the same vein that we're stepping through now, I've actually just noticed as well, it looks like Dane Liccardo may have joined in a slightly different livery, because the car we're seeing on the screen is white when it should be a different colour. So I'm wondering if there's been some issues and he's just picked up a temporary car there. So that's a little bit something different to keep an eye out for. Roadies, we have a look at this grid for race 2.
Yes, so starting from pole position is Will Devonish again, starting his 101st race this time around for CRE Engineering. Starting alongside him is Lockie Burke's strong performance at the start of that race, and then just kept with it at the back end of it to start from second for this one. Tim Redmond starting out of 3rd position for Beyond Racing, much more where we expect to see him in the order, with Dan Liccardo in 4th in what is going to be a chrome car for round 2. Very much not intended. I have a feeling which livery he thinks he's running, but it's not actually available for the public yet, so that's a bit of a boo-boo on Dane's end. 5th is Ben Hall for Luke McHugh Racing. Good strong run for Ben there in race 1, with Lockie Lock in 6th. Another driver doing well for CRE. 7th is Lewis Wedding for Real Holmix Racing Team. Good run for him with Cam Rutley, Curtis Igmanis, the C's threw him, slowing me off, recovering to 8th after an early off. Ryan Cox coming in 9th. Good run for him in race 1, with Enden Snipes in 10th. 11th is Daniel Cox for Sydney Motorsport with Cheese in 12th. Good run for him as well. Both the Beyond Racing Team cars coming up well. Hans Brunswick in 13th at the end of that one. He was running quite well, but tyres not gone his way. With Pratt in 14th. He's been running pretty stably so far tonight. Rossi is in 15th, the second of the Holden Pixel Racing Team cars. He'll be recovering through the field, with Cam Rutledge in 16th. He's been having a very stable but a very quiet night. 17th is Pete Thrower for Beyond Racing, with Nathan Higginson in 18th, Beyond Racing Young Guns. 19th is Brenton Foley, the first of the PBF Race Engineering ZV Commodores. 20th is Zach Brown, the second of the team cars, with Bailey Hall starting out of 21st for Beyond Racing Team Young Guns.
There we go. Drivers to watch out for in this one, coming through the field: Zach Brown, Brenton Foley, Brendan Ross, Hans Brunswick. They're probably the 4 on my radar, Roadie, that I'm looking at and wondering how far up the grid can they get. So they're starting out, so you got Brunswick out of 13th, Ross 15th, and then Foley and Brown 19th and 20th. So we get set here, race number 2 for the night. Race 4 of the championship, the Sydney triple header here at Sydney Motorsport Park. Just waiting on the lights to get going here. And there we go, cars are set. And we are ready to go racing. 18 more laps, 50 more kilometres, 21 supercars, and off we go. Burke, beautiful conversion off the start. He will lead into turn 1. Devonish is going to have to defend here from Liccardo around the outside. Redmond was trying to fit a square peg and a round hole there between Will Devonish and Dane Liccardo going down to turn 1. And now he's going to have a look down the inside, possibly on Devonish, but no room there. And Hall is going to have to try and hold it right around the outside of Redmond going into turn 3, and he does. He sticks his nose in there, and Wedding sticking his nose in there as well. 2 Commodores ganging up on the Hoonicorn Mustang of Tim Redmond. I don't know. Did I get that right?
You did. Yeah. Well,
close.
The Hoonicorn. I called it the Hoonikiwi. We called it the
Hoonikiwi. That's it.
The Hoonikiwi, which was a pun on Hoonicorn. But no, good run for Redmond to start there. Holding off that very angry line of cars behind. He's actually the sort of leader of a train of a whole bunch of cars now. Will Devonish breaking away taking Dane Liccardo with him, a very shiny Dane Liccardo, and Lockie Burke 2 for 2 with the strong starts in these races, but this in race 1 didn't go too well for him, so we're not sure whether it be the same versus same as the first this time around. But no, we got Lewis Wedding currently up on the back of Ben Hall and Tim Redmond, probably trying to make a bit of a breakaway, give himself a little bit of breathing room after that very hectic start to race the first lap of race 2.
Wedding had a little bit of a look down the inside at Ben Hall in turn 2, but thought better of it, fell back into line, because if he had stayed there much longer, he was probably going to be vulnerable to Curtis Egmanis right around the outside, who's made a spot here on Lockie Lock in the opening lap. Ryan Cox doesn't look like he has gone anywhere. And heading down towards turn number 6 and 7 for the second time. Now, Ben Hall was quite strong in the latter stages of race number 1, competing against Brenton Foley. Different beast here competing against Lewis Wedding in the Real Pixel Holden racing team. And he's very wide there. That'll be a little bit of a vulnerable moment. Wedding would have sniffed that, and he will be all over the rear wing of the number 21 Luke McHugh Racing Commodore by the time they get to turn number 2. It looks like he backed out, lost a bit of ground, but now he gets on the accelerator pedal a little bit earlier, gets much better drive, but just fractionally not able to get on the brakes early enough. That's all it was, so late enough than Hall.
Yeah, Hall almost looked like he was, I know he wasn't, but he almost looked like he was going to move on Redmond with how late he was on the brakes with the cars around him. But just trying to cover off on Lewis Wedding, and probably also keeping in mind, at least trying to run with Tim Redmond, maybe to run past him, because Tim is going to start to slowly pull away here, but definitely trying to keep with Redmond and keep Wedding and the train behind. He's got Curtis Egmanis and Lockie Lock in there as well.
Certainly is. And I think John McDonald in the chat's right here. There's going to be a bit of a drama here, I think, sooner or later between Hall and Wedding. And maybe it might also bring the 51 machine of Egmanis into play here. They're arguing quite loudly at the moment over positions 5, 6 and 7.
Yeah,
pass for the lead. Sorry, Roddy,
yep.
Pass for the lead. So Burke's held the lead for the opening 3 laps, and Will Devonish is ranging up on the outside at turn number 2. Can't quite get it done. He's going to have the inside for 3, but the next part of the track goes left. So Burke has the running here. They go side by side. No, leaves the gap. Good, respectful driving.
Yeah, and Devonish and longevity of pace compared to Burke. He doesn't have to make the pass right now. And to be fair, Liccardo is going to be a threat on pace, but I'm not sure how Riccardo's managed his tyre life. We've got a car running in the background that might have actually been Curtis Egmanis.
It is. It's Termo. He's off in the weeds, and he's in the other side of the shot there. There he is, recovering to the circuit. That's a similar part of the track to where he went off in race 1. I was just having a look to see what was happening to Brendan Ross, how he was progressing through the field. Let's see what has befell the number 51 CRE Engineering Mustang. Ross had actually was a bit further back, and looks like he's just lit it up all on his own.
Yeah, I think at worst maybe might just been a little bit buried under Wedding, and maybe
wing, yeah.
Him going where Wedding wasn't going maybe just meant that the way the car pivoted with ever so slight contact meant that Wedding felt nothing, and the finish had Termo around. But either way, he's now back to 20th, so he's got a bit of recovery drive to do again. So the 2 races for Termo with recovery drives. Oh,
what was going on just ahead there with Higginson and Thrower and Foley? That was side by side heading up into 6, which usually doesn't go at this part of the circuit. And Bailey Hall's all in there as well. Have a look at this. Is like the championship battle for what is it? 14th.
Yep. I did say before race 1 that whether Higginson would be fighting for a position like it's the last lap, and what championship battle for 14 definitely sounds like that.
Certainly does, and Higginson might lose a spot here to Foley if he's going to go the long way around at turn number 2. Can Foley hang it right around the outside? It's a canny old fox usually, but he hasn't had that much wiggle room to work with that time, with Higginson firmly shutting the door at turn number 2. And how's his teammate Brown going? He's moved up to 18th in all of this, so they're slowly picking their way through the field. They haven't made the progress that they would have liked just yet, but still 2/3 of this race to go. God damn, it's going quick.
Yeah, I've just noticed we've actually got all 3 PBF cars in the strand as well. Brap's down the back, so I'm not sure whether Brap had a small spin or something somewhere to be starting down the back. He did start out of the middle of the back half of the top 20. So for him to be now in 20th position means something's gone wrong for him. But yeah, there's an angry little train here of the couple of the Kiwi cars, couple of the Ford Series cars, and a couple of the PBF cars.
Turbo down the inside now of Zach Brown at turn 1. Very authoritative pass down at turn 1. Brown's going to just try and stay there for a little bit, but Turmo's got the high ground this time and consolidates the pass at 2. So 2 sets of recovery drives now for Turmo. 2 self-inflicted mistakes, but I think you're right, Rody. I think maybe he was just buried a little bit too far under the rear wing of Wedding's Pixel Commodore, and because he was too close, maybe just gave Wedding a slight tap, then tried to jump, sort of, not so jump on the brakes, but clear the throttle pedal to create some separation, which has upset the balance of the car. So he's got to really recover hard here. He's got Bailey Hall, Brent Foley, and then Nathan Higginson to process through, and then ahead of that is Peter Thrower. This is a massive lineup of cars as well heading down the front straight. Some 7 or 8 cars all in a train here. And heading that queue, as I said, is Peter Thrower. NZ Snipes has just dropped out of the top 10. Brendan Ross, though, has moved inside the top 10, so good recovery for him. Continuing the recovery from race number 1 up to 10th. And setting his sights on the back of Daniel Cox. And then the stablemate, Hans Brunswick, he's actually had a fairly good recovery as well. He started out of, 13th, finds himself in 8th and pressing Lockie Lock for 7th place.
Yeah, and he has some good pace in race 1. Not so much even the tyres, I think the brakes were really what was betraying him a little bit down turn 2. The sequential laps where he was running wide and actually gifting the back to Lewis Wedding in their little battle they were having. And that's a bit awkward when, you know, you let a teammate pass and then they go and spray it wide a couple more later and you have to pass again. Because then you start to really give advantage over something behind you, and they're not teammates, so they won't really respect what you're doing, and they'll try and send it for a pass somewhere.
Brunswick down the inside at turn 1 like Egmanis did last lap around, and gets Lockie Lock quite comfortably there. And he's had a big moment though. He's had a compression lock going into turn 1 and to turn 2 rather, and all that hard work is undone. Ross gets a free position as well.
Yeah, so I should have touched on it before saying that. Again, the braking at turn 2 not being Brunswick's friend tonight. Probably the only thing that's really impacting his race so far, and that's probably something he needs to work on for race 3, because it's an easy one to get wrong. It's a very easy way to come up to the boss, as we've seen Nathan
Higginson
drive through. Not sure he's been through he hasn't been through the lane. That'll be for track abuse, and that would have been through the fast chicane. Yeah,
certainly will. So he's racked up 1 too many penalty points with stewards inside the first 9 laps, and he is going to have to tour the lane. So not a good result there, but as we said at the beginning of the broadcast, it's very, very easy to do. You know, you can bite off a little bit too much at turn number 1, at the first part of the chicane, and you can stray a little bit wide at the second part of the chicane. So very, very easy to do, and if you don't practice that part of the track, because there's so much time to be gained and lost there, then you're bound to wind up in a bit of a difficult situation come the later stages of the race. Here we go, heading up through the chicane here, and on board with Daniel Cox now. He's in the process of trying to hunt down Lockie Lock. Not sure if he'll be as successful as Brunswick was. Only time will tell.
Yeah, with Cox and Lock, we'll probably see we'll probably end up seeing just a resumption of the race 1 battle we saw. They were locked together in a pretty good battle up until a bit of contact. I imagine if there was any agreements between the drivers, that would have been sorted either, or probably after race 1, there would have been some team chat together. They would have had a discussion about it and would have come to an agreement. So I imagine you're not going to see any sort of yes.
Sorry, Roddy. Here's an argument. Turbo and be arguing over position with Bailey Hall and Brent Foley, and Zach Brown keeping a watching brief. They were in a bit of a triangular shape of 3 cars going down the front straight there, very, very close to nose to tail. Turbo's come out on top in this little exchange, and looks like Brent Foley maybe has managed to get the better of Bailey Hall, and looks like that opened the door for Zach Brown as well, with Hall having a little moment on the exit of 2.
Yeah, well, there's a little bit of tit for tat there. I think Hall just ever slowly out-braked himself behind Foley and ran Foley a little bit wide of the corner, so Foley's sort of turned back in and just reminded him that, no, I do still exist, Bailey. I'm not going to fall over that easy. So in the end,
let's have a look at
back
that one.
where they were, but actually Zach Brown now getting a move done and actually might just get the pass done now on Bailey Hall.
So here we go. Yep. So there's a little bit of a nudge there, as you saw. Bailey Hall into the turn, sort of. Oh, and yeah, you're right. Foley gave him a short back and sides, didn't he? Right there, and then it was a case for Bailey Hall of surprise when Zach Brown arrived on the scene a few split seconds later.
Yeah, so Zach has now completed that pass, which Cam Rutledge is running it pretty nice in the back of this train as well. We saw in race 1, Cam maybe not quite having the pace of really any other cars on track. The only one not to drop into the one. I haven't actually looked at his best laps so far today, in this race. But yeah, he's running pretty comfortably at the back, and actually he's probably being buoyed a little bit by having these cars at the back of the race with him just to keep him busy.
And Daniel Cox just got that pass done as well on Lockie Lock, so we're having a look at the replay here. Oh, Lock had a major moment at turn 2. He had a compression lock as well, and Cox was there in a flash and made that move stick and got it done well and truly before turn 3. So a couple of mistakes creeping into some of the drivers late in this race. Good job and good heads up driving by Cox. He's moved up 4 spots overall in this race for top 10 position at the moment. Brendan Ross is the next man, looking like he's going to try and size up a move on the 5 Active Energy backed Mustang heading down into turn 2. No opportunity this time, but still a handful of laps to go.
Yeah, it's actually gone, again, it's going pretty quickly, and so far, I've touched wood because I've been accused in the chat of cursing Hans again, that, yeah, the things have kept pretty clean as well, which has been good to see, which is, aside from the little sprays we've seen, individual moments, yeah, it's keeping the racing fairly clean and keeping everybody, crucially, everyone's got someone to race with, I think, at this point of the race.
Yeah, majority of people do. It's actually been a change for position between the two Beyond Racing Team Tanifer Mustangs as well. Cheese has gone ahead of NZ Snipes here, started inside the top 10, so he's lost 2 spots, and Cheese has come up 1 spot to be 11th, but they've of course lost positions to Brendan Ross and Hans Brunswick, who have been charging their way through the field from outside the 10. Looks like Igmanis in the background there was potentially lining up another pass on Ryan Cox, and he has got that moved up, heading down into turn number 1, so it's another position on this recovery drive. Are we going to have to come up with a new name for Termo with all these recovery drives? Like, I've been watching a bit of snooker, and they called Hossein Fafai the gardener because he was finding so many plants during the snooker match, so they thought he might be better off served as a gardener. What are we going to call Termo?
We'll come up with something. I mean, we're going back a few years now to the days of 4th Mitch, where my Mitch was so very comfortably entrenched in 4th position in racing that he just became 4th Mitch. Yeah, we'll have to come up with something. I mean, Termo's going to have to probably do it a few more times before it becomes a nickname, but to be fair, everybody knows me for running the field out of fuel happened once. So it's maybe the strength of the incident, the strength of the occasion rather than the frequency of it. But yeah, he's got some good pace on now. I think he's going to start to maybe check into the Tanifer region of the field in the next couple of laps. But he's only got a few more laps to do it. We're already at lap 15 of this race.
Yeah, here we are. Cox hasn't really been able to draw away from Lockie Lock and Brendan Ross just yet as well. He hasn't got the pace to really clear out. This is what I was sort of looking at before the pass happened, that they were in a bit of a stalemate when Cox was behind Lock. He wasn't really making any inroads, and Lock really wasn't making any headway to try and make any more room. As we get a race control penalty for Brent Foley, that'll be through the flip-flop as well. So second driver falls victim to the track limits at turn number 4 and 5. We've got a car in the pits. We've got Nathan Higginson in the pits.
All right, that's interesting because he didn't save much tyre, but technically he did get to do a drive-through, which would have saved a little bit of tyre. The tyres would have had a chance to cool down, so strategy really not playing his way. I was about to say, he probably would have been rejoicing because with the drive-through for Foley would have put him in the same position Higginson was in, which would have meant Higginson had someone to race, but if Higginson's just been to pit, he's just given himself up another, well, almost a lap worth. He's actually 2 laps down at this point. He's given up another about a lap's worth of time, so he does now have nobody to race aside from the cars that are lapping him.
2 good battles on track at the moment as well. 5th and 6th place between Ben Hall and Lewis Wedding, which I think has just been a little bit upset there. They've gone and says 4th and 5th, but that'll be a timing glitch because Redmond is definitely still on the road ahead of them at the moment. So Ben Hall has just been soaking up the pressure applied by Lewis Wedding here, and he has not cracked. So this is a stellar performance against a much seasoned veteran in Lewis Wedding. Likewise, squabbling over the last spots on the rostrum with 2 laps to go, Lockie Burke and Dane Liccardo. So former, I guess do we call it, were they former teammates at one stage, I think, Rhodey, in some form or another?
Yeah, like the very early days of, actually, yes, I think technically there was some actual race crossover between Burke and Liccardo AAR. They obviously were both a part of the Hype Sim Sport division before that became a one-car team at the start of the actual racing in 2021. But yeah, and they have also been mates through the whole thing. Obviously now running under different stables, one of them is London CRE, but still good mates. I think we're talking up the idea of running maybe a Nürburgring Enduro together on iRacing later in the year. But no, good little battle between these guys. Both getting a bit too happy there on the throttle out of the corner. Nathan Ingerson another drive-through.
Yep, that'll be for track limits as well.
Seeing in that one, but yeah, with a lap left to go, Burke might have just broken the back of Liccardo.
Yeah, I think he has now. He's got a good 0.7 of a second gap, which pretty much a lot of that all came out of the last corner. So he got really good drive purchase out of the last corner. And that should give him plenty of insurance policy to the checkered flag. We're not going to miss the finish of this race. We missed his 100th finish, his 100th race start across the line, Will Devonish, but it was a pretty close run thing for most of the race there. It was only sort of in the last 5 or 6 laps that the gap has ballooned out. It was sort of hovering at about 0.9 of a second for around lap 13, and he's ploughed on with it afterwards. So keeping the perfect momentum going at the moment, Will Devonish, maximum points for the round and for the season. And to the line he comes. So he will get another race win here, and well deserved. Coming to the finish line here, Lockie Burke, second place. So another great result for him. Good performance. Front row start, converts into second place, led a couple of laps, and then Dane Liccardo started third, finishes third. So top 3 as they started from race number 1, finishing again in race number 2. Actually, top 4, call it as well, because Tim Redmond home in 4th. Oh, sorry, he was down a spot, actually. It's all been corrected now. And then Ben Hall, geez, he soaked up the pressure for the entire race ahead of Lewis Wedding, a much more fancy person you would have expected to make the pass, and has held on for 5th place. Fantastic result there, ahead of Wedding in 6th. Cox in 7th. He outlasted Locke for 8th. Brendan Ross recovers to 9th, so he can continue to move forward from there. And then Brunswick, he recovers to 10th.
Yeah, that was some good running actually for the Pixel Cars at the end there, for Ross to recover back up to 9th and Brunswick up to 10th, especially with the couple of incidents we saw for him. Tomo in the end finishing 11th, so again a strong recovery drive for him to get back to almost the top 10, hopefully in race 3. I'm going to go back and return to my wood that he doesn't need to do that again in race 3, but if he does, there's more fuel for a nickname change perhaps from the one I currently have for him, which is not broadcast friendly. 12th is NZ Snipes for BRS and Team Hannaford. I think that's actually not a 1-2. Ryan Cox actually fell off a little bit. Actually, I don't think he fell off. Actually,
he fell back to 13th after all of that.
He fell back, yeah, in the end, so 13th, but still good solid points for Cox. Cheese finishing 14th with Cam Rutledge in 15th. Actually, advantage of some of the other stuff happening around him. He's actually finished ahead of Zach Brown in the end. And Cam Rutledge actually also crucially did get below a minute for his best lap time, 59.5 over was his best. Bailey Hall in 17th, Brapp in 18th, Foley home in 19th after picking up a drive-through, Pete Thrower home in 20th, and Nathan Hinginson after picking up 2 drive-throughs, which I don't think he actually served the second one, and pit stop as well, finishing 21st.
I think he actually did serve that drive-through because I'm showing him as 16 laps completed, but because he did a drive-through, he then did had a pit stop and then had another drive-through as well. He actually fell 2 laps off the leaders at the end of that race. So that probably does explain why he was only completed 16 laps. And then he had Thrower and Foley, who completed 17. I think Thrower must have had an off, and Foley, we know, had to go through the lane at some point as well. Well, we still got one more race to go, and we're just going to have a little bit of a short break here while the drivers all gather their thoughts. Actually, it's going to be a bit of an extended break because, as we've alluded to at the top of the program, it is a bit of a special night for ASR. There has been, I guess, a lot of talk in the off-season about Gen 3 and what ASR were going to do with the platform. Now, I guess from the ASR admin point of view, the only real thing we had in the backs of our minds was that it wouldn't be fair and it wouldn't be right to put something out for Gen 3 that wasn't a polished product. And a lot of people know out there that the biggest thing from the Gen 3 this year have been the drivability of the cars is different. Therefore, the physics of the cars is different. Tyres are a little bit different. The way the cars perform is a bit different. And that is a very, very core crux of Gen 3. And getting that right is probably been one of the most pride-filled things that the ASR admin team are looking forward to. And it's not quite there yet. So, as much as a lot of you have seen this little display kicking around on the socials, on Facebook and on Instagram over the last couple of days, the note that I want to draw your attention to is just at the bottom there where it says coming soon 28th of the 4th, which of course is today. What this is, it is not a release of these Generation 3 cars. It is the first public demonstration of just how far ASR has come with the Generation 3 cars. It's been a collaborative effort. It hasn't all been just ASR. There's been plenty of work going on in collaboration with Dream Simulation and in particular Thomas Randall, current V8 Supercars driver, who's been providing information and feedback about what could best be changed to make things a bit more suitable for the cars. And so with the principal architect of both of these cars currently sitting in the commentary box alongside us, Nathan Higginson, Higo, I think it's time we unveil the Gen 3 prototypes.
I think it is too. Good evening, fellas. How are we?
We're very good. So here they are. They're heading out onto track at the moment. The Mustang and the Camaro just leaving the lane at the moment. Talk us through these, Higo, because these haven't. These are the first time that these cars are seeing the light of day. But it's not been an overnight build. It's been quite a number of months in the making, piecing things together from photographs and taking inspiration from official drawings and such. And it still is a fair way to go before these are completely polished product.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, Steve. We've been working now for probably the last 6 months, I'd say, since pretty much the end of the 2022 season, when people really started ramping up in the real world and getting their cars ready. I sort of thought, well, I think it's probably time for us to do the same. So, with some of the things that I've done through my own work that I do for some people through Higginson Media Design, I've been able to come into contact with a lot of really, really good people in the Australian motorsport community that have thrown their support behind me in being able to produce what you guys are seeing here on screen at the moment. And I think that these cars are probably going to be the best representation of a supercar from Gen 3 that there's going to be. It's been a hard slog, especially with the ever-changing landscape and very fluid landscape that real-life supercars Gen 3 is. But I think we've done pretty well so far. The collaborative effort between myself, the rest of the ASR admin team, obviously Tom Randall, as you said, regarding physics development. That's been something that we really pride ourselves on, is the fact that we do have that link with Dream Simulation, and conversation between myself, Tom, and a couple of the other fellas, Lewis, Rossi. It's almost daily conversation regarding the feel of the cars, how they look. He's given us some awesome insight into how they look in the interior from the driver's eye view, and I've been able to replicate that using what I have from both Tom and the rest of the guys that I do work for in real life, to produce something that, yeah, as I said, I think is going to be the best representation of a Gen 3 supercar on a sim. Bar, obviously, unfortunately, iRacing, because they've got access to the real thing. Obviously, yep. Yeah, I think that's really all I have to say about it for the moment.
Yeah, that's it.
Open up to questions from you fellas.
No, that's a very valid point you mentioned as well. Of course, the iRacing community will have access at some point to like proper official CAD drawn Mustang and Camaro when iRacing actually gets them together and gets the finished product up and running for them. We obviously don't know how long that will be. We of course don't have access to a lot of those sorts of drawings. There have been some snippets that we've been able to visually see for things such as fuel fillers and those sorts of things. So you can see on some of the sides of the cars when we get the side-on shots that there's actually the positions for the air spikes for the fuel filler caps, and that's a little something that is a bit new and a bit different that you've opted for this particular one. The previous generation cars that we've had, they don't really have the fuel filler caps and stuff on the correct sides as per what the racetracks you go to from where the pits happen to be, as we're going on board here having a look at the Mustang. So there's actually a little change in the AMS workshop that you can actually swap the appearance of what side of the car they appear on, depending on whether you're left-hand or right-hand.
Yeah, that's correct. And we're going to be setting up in a way that we won't have people setting it themselves, depending on what track you go to. Say you go to Eastern Creek or Island, Bathurst, any of the tracks where the fuel filler and the air spike is on the left-hand side, it'll automatically choose that to be on the left-hand side. And then if you have a air spike on the right-hand side and a fuel filler on the right-hand side, say at tracks like Calder Park, trying to think of another track that's got their fuel fillers up. Barbagallo, yep, another one. That'll automatically be selected for you when we go to that circuit.
Yeah, so no need to actually change the side of the car. So that's actually a really great initiative to see there. Just saw a couple of pictures there, obviously with the onboard and the cameras as well, seeing how the car reacts under power. There are, of course, a couple of little idiosyncrasies that still need to be tied up. You just saw about 30 seconds ago, the shot out of the back of the Mustang, looking rearwards toward the Camaro, and there was a couple of little small things in the way of the camera. And there's little parts of the puzzle that are still yet to be fully tidied up. And I think what's the percentage of completion? I think you go on this. I think we'll be tracking sort of around about 85% complete, but then the majority of the remaining 15 is sort of going to go towards the physics.
I'd say that probably, yeah. Obviously, we have a dream simulation. It's going to be a long hard slope with regards to physics and cars. Right, we're still going to develop tyres. Tyres that are currently running are a match between tyres that we currently use and tyres that have been developed in collaboration with Dream. With regards to that, we need to create a super soft tyre. And another thing that actually this branches onto another really nicely new setup. And it does feature on this year's cars is that we have tyres. We have changing sidewalls.
Yes, sidewall colours on the compound.
Yeah, sidewall colours per compound change. So it's obviously a really nice thing for the broadcast to see. It's also it's a visual aid for other people to see, oh, he's on softs, or he's on super softs, or he's on hards.
Here's the driver's eye. Yeah. Something to look at here on board with the Mustang chasing the Camaros. You can see the tail lights are lighting up and things as well. And there's a hell of a lot of detail going on with the cars as well. Just so a lot of small details, such as having the little tiny strakes for the pit lane lights or the pit limiter lights inside the uprights of the rear wing and things as well. So there's an insane level of detail going on with these cars as they're heading down the front straight. Starting to ramp it up now. I think they're boys out there at the moment. They're really starting to put the power down. I think we clocked them. Time just gone through. They're not pushing fully hard at the moment, but they are doing about 1 minute and 2 seconds lap time, and that's one of the other things too, isn't it, Higo? We've got to sort of try and make sure we can replicate the lap times, not to the exact figures, but sort of as close as possible, because that's where we know you've sort of got that balance between physics and drivability, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and with regards to that, I was having a chat to Tom just after up the park, and in the work that he's done in the sim, he did before the Albert Park round, he went out and did a 147.2, which was the best lap time in the sim, and at Albert Park he actually went out with the best time of the whole weekend, was a 147.2. So the basis of physics that we have so far is it's there, but there's a lot that can be improved on. The drivability of these ones is vastly different to a Gen 2 car. These are very wild. They have a lot of torque down low. The initial throttle ramp is very wild in the fact that you can be pushing through the start of a corner. You get to the midpoint, you're starting to put the throttle just that tiny bit back on, and it instantly just snaps into wheel spin. And it's hard to control, but the moment you get it right, it is very, very rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. I can sympathise with that. And I think we worked out too that before the cars went out, as I think looks like they're coming in for their in lap now, that they actually were running quite a short diff ratio today when they've come out and done these demonstration laps. So you can imagine what the power, the ramping up of that power is going to be, especially if they have it down low with a short gear ratio. It would be, go from mundane to insane in a nanosecond.
Absolutely, yeah. Diff ratios they've been a crucial point of improvement that we've got to. We've had access to some of the operations manuals that are publicly available from the supercars. So we've got the proper gear ratios for each circuit that we know are used and have put them in. We closed off Bathurst a couple of weeks ago to do some private testing on the Bathurst ratio, and we could safely confirm that these cars do hit 300 down Conrod. That's something that hasn't happened for a very long time, and I'm sure that if we have them as close as we think we have them, I'm certain this year you'll see the real cars doing 300 down Conrod.
Fantastic. Here you go. Thanks for joining us in that one for a little demonstration. Much appreciated, and we'll let you go back to your race car and get ready.
Thank you. Have a good evening, fellas.
Thanks, mate. Well, there you go. The first public demonstration of the amount of work that has gone in over the last several months in combination between ASR, Dream Simulation, and Thomas Randall with getting the cars to where they are currently sitting at the moment. So as we said, there's still a fair way to go with regards to getting cars up and running. There's a lot of work on the physics front. There's a lot of little bits and pieces to tidy up, just really, really small stuff. I think that's probably the simplest way I can put it, but very, very crucial stuff. One thing that we did get some screenshots of before coming to broadcast tonight, I'm just going to bring these up now. They'll load very, very quickly. A couple of renders just of the current cars liveries on top of the Gen 3 platform. I can see it there. There's the one of Nathan Higginson's machine sitting there on the Camaro, of course, the Camaro, the direct change over for the Holden Commodore, and then the other one, which would be the Will Devonish Gen 3 Mustang. There you go. There's the what the current Gen 3 Mustang looks like with the Will Devonish Mustang livery all over it. So, Rhodey, first impressions. Wow.
Yeah, I'm just getting through now. My end, the first look at Higginson's car. I think he needs to put a bit more blue on that car now. Just that there's a lot of white areas on that Camaro. Will's car. It's one of those times that we'll work on. Either it very much goes across. I hope he does something different. I hope we don't have a situation where CRE start becoming a bit like Dick Johnson Racing, where they pick a design, they stick with it constantly. But No, a couple of designs starting to come out already. Just as a little visual render, just to aid to how the cars are going to look and how things will convert. And obviously, that matters as well for guys designing liveries. Is a lot of guys through various forms have gotten used to the ZB the ZB and the Mustang. The Mustang since 2021, the ZB I think goes back a couple of years before that. I think we first had the ZB actually in 2019. So there've been people that have been painting for the ZB for 5 seasons that are now having to think of something new if they want to represent the General Motors side of the grid. But there'll be some really good. Obviously, there'll be some really good liveries. I imagine that will come out when we start to see the Gen 3 make its public debut, and obviously then set up to race it in our ASR Supercars Championship. And if anyone wants me to do them a design, I'd like a chance to paint on the new cars as well. I think a lot of guys would like a chance to. I know there's a few guys poking around the group that maybe are involved themselves, but also are involved as painters. I wouldn't be surprised. We'll probably see a few Daniel Cox Designs cars. We'll see a few probably done by Lockie Lock. Dane, there's maybe been a bit quiet, but we'll probably see a few from Dane. I know the guys from Beyond will get involved. Lewis and Rossi will be busy. Foley will have a crack at, I think, some new Camaros. I think there was very light discussion at one point about maybe considering a Mustang, but I think at this point we're still very much going to be a red team, which would make sense. We've been a red team since day dot. But if anyone's maybe at the privateer end of the grid who wants some help for next year, once the cars are out and ready to go, I can lend a paintbrush. But no, there'll be some. I'm quite keen to see how these cars come out, even if it's going to be a while before I get to race them.
Yeah, I think it'll be a little while still before even I get a chance to put my hands around the wheel of one of those cars. I mean, I'm sort of used now to driving the FG that graces the development series rounds. I mean, I'm not sure if Glenn Miles is going to be back for round 3, but I've been keeping the seat warm for him, not figuratively, not literally. While he's been unfortunately out with graphics card issues, I've been getting quite fond of that car. So it'll be a bit of a hard switch to go from something so docile to something that's that can potentially bite your head off in a very, very short space of time. As we've got 2 minutes left in this very, very quick practice session, that's just jumped up at the conclusion of the Gen 3 demonstration lap. So I do want to say a very, very big thank you to the Supercars field for letting the ASR admin team schedule in the demonstration laps for Gen 3. It was something that was a little bit impromptu, sort of came off the bat about 2 to 3 weeks ago after the last round was over. And to their credit, Nathan Higginson, Lewis Wedding, Brendan Ross, they were on board in a heartbeat. And it's actually been working right up until the death today, with finalising bits and pieces to actually make that happen and get that all scheduled in. So the most important thing I do want to say is big thank you to everybody that's racing tonight for letting us schedule out to the broadcast, because we know it's still approaching midnight in New Zealand at the moment. As just seen Brent Foley go for a bit of a wild ride at turn 3, so thankfully for him, we didn't capture that on the broadcast, but caught the tail end of it there. And of course, the guys on the eastern seaboard, for them, it's approaching 10 o'clock, same as it is for us here in broadcast. So there's probably about another half an hour left in the night's proceedings, everybody. So we've got race 3 coming up very shortly, followed by a very, very quick round wrap for the top 3 as it currently sits in the championship for tonight. So that'll be the top 3 drivers with the most amount of points. At this stage, be Will Devonish, Lockie Burke and Dane Liccardo as it sits on points right about now. If they finish where they are starting from in race number 1, if they finished race number 2, if they're starting and they finish the same spots in race 3, then we'll probably be having a very, very quick chat with them at the end of the night.
Just seeing a message in the chat from Darren Lognan in response to your comments about potentially being out of the Playboy car at the next round of Dev Series, and he'll be able to see something other than the back of the 69, which I think he's
Glenn Miles' car.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can attest to that. I can appreciate that. It's been a car that they called me for a long time the most difficult person to get past in ASR. That mantle has sadly passed on to Darren Kemp, who's actually doing a bloody good job of filling in and taking that moniker off me. There's I don't know where I sort of start with that when it comes to what I do to answer Darren's comment, but we'll worry about that a little bit later on. Darren himself's a great driver. On his day, he's a very, very good driver. He had a very, very difficult opening round at Calder Park and actually had a much better round at SMP a couple of weeks ago. So I wouldn't say that he's staring at the back of me on a regular basis. It's swings and roundabouts. Different tracks suit different cars. Calder was a little bit of an outlier. He had a bad round. I had a much, much better round. Unfortunately for him, he was staring at my rear wing for most of Calder.
We were about to kick over into the race start, but I've just seen just as we got into the race session, we lost Bailey Hall, so we are going to have a sort of a restart just to get Bailey back in.
Yeah, we certainly are. I've been really, really pleased just this year just to see everybody engaging in the chat. It's been a really, really great experience to see so many positive comments, so many great things that everybody's got to say. Everybody's supporting each other. There's been some really, really good comments that are in there. We do have some permission this year. We do have a couple of prizes still in the prize kitty from ASR. That we do have permission to hand out throughout the year. We've got we've got a couple of sets of Ryco Sim style gloves. We've got some Penrite merch. We've got some plenty of Milwaukee merchandise as well. So I want to see over the course of the next couple of rounds, for those that tune in on a regular basis, I'd love to see, some great comments, some helpful comments, some funny comments, something that there's something in response to the racing that jumps out and makes us laugh and does all sorts of predicting race results or things like that. For some of those comments that we see in the chat, if we think it's a great comment, we will give you a shout out and we will send you a little prize your way with thanks to either Penrite, Ryco or Milwaukee.
Walshy immediately trying to go for the humorous value by mentioning the fact that, and I will touch the wood because I know he hasn't.
Yeah.
There, where's my desk? There it is. That there has been no safety cars so far tonight. But of course, by saying that, you immediately bring 10 times the likelihood of there being one for the rest of the night. So, but to be fair, we would only be living up to the standard that Dev Series have set. And to be fair, Dev Series have been setting a good standard this year. They've actually, I think, 2 races, if I can remember as far back as Calder, 4 or 6 races in Dev Series have been safety car free so far this year, which considering what Dev Series has been previously, that's also pretty good. So they've been setting the standard, but I don't know, Walshy might have just jinxed the whole lot of us.
Maybe. I think you might be right there. All right, so hopefully it looks like we're about ready to get set for race number 3 tonight with a bit of luck. All 21 drivers back in the server, just waiting for everybody to get themselves organised, and then we'll be set to go for the final race of the round.
So, predictions for this race. Nether, I think we can kind of guarantee who's going to win this race just based off how the last 2 races went, unless he continues, to be fair, on his habitual ways of bottling race starts, because he has improved on that, but he seems to have regressed tonight.
Yeah, well, we thought we were over the hump, weren't we, when we got to Calder Park, and he had some really good starts from the front row of the grid. That's what sort of befuddled us, is like, oh my goodness, he's actually had a good start for a change. And you're right, it seems that he's actually regressed a little bit. In his defence, though, Sydney Motorsport Park's grid, for a good chunk of it, is on an incline. And so there is a little bit of an element to this, the race start here. Not so much down where the pole position and the front maybe 2 or 3 rows are, but more so further up the back of the grid. But it is noticeable. You can even see Will Devonish, even before he engaged the throttle there, sort of very quickly or very slowly rolling at the start. Here we go, grid for race 3.
Alrighty, so pole for the 3rd time tonight is Will Devonish for Sierra Range Engineering. Alongside him again is Lockie Burke for the Fuchs HSP dealer team. Hopefully he can make a little more of it this race. Dan Liccardo in third position with Series Performance Racing. Podium in the end actually in race 2 for him, so he's scoring some good points. And actually, he had a deal about podiums that I have to back him up on if he gets an interview queue later. Fourth is Tim Redmond from Beyond Racing. Been a good solid run for him in his first round of the season so far, with Ben Hall in fifth, another one with a solid debut to the season. Lewis Wedding in sixth place with Daniel Cox in seventh place. Seems he got the better of Lockie Lock in that race. Lockie Lock will be starting from eighth. Ninth is Brendan Ross, the second of the Pixel Holden Racing Team Commodores, with Hans Brunswick running at the top 10. Actually, I think that is... That's 3 of the 4. I actually can't remember. Definitely at least 3 of the 4 Pixel cars in the top 10. Did it again. Curtis McManus in 11th to Sierra Engineering. I will get his name right. With NZ Snipes in 12th, leading Ryan Cox for Castrol Racing. 14th is Cheese, the second of the Team Tanner for Mustangs, with Cam Rutledge in 15th for Sydney Motorsport. 16th is Zach Brown, the best of the PBF cars this time around, with Bailey Hall in 17th position. 18th will be Bratt filling in for Phil Boak, with Foley in 19th, second of PBF Race Engineering Commodores. Peter Thrower is 20th, and 21st for this race will be the man we were just talking to, Nathan Higginson, with 2 drive-throughs and a pit stop in the last race. Fair to say you can only go up from here.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, the only way is up for Nathan Higginson. He cannot get any lower than he is right now, unless it's a DNF, and we don't wish that upon him at all whatsoever. So on to the start-finish line comes Will Devenish and Co. And we are set. Here we go. Race 3 of tonight's proceedings. Race 5 of the championship for 2023. And it is now underway. Great start again, Lockie Burke. What a ripping launch for Burke and for Redmond. He jumped Liccardo at the start there as well. And Devenish might very well get pinched on the inside here, heading down into turn 1. And he does. He's been gazumped by Burke, Redmond and Liccardo, who has a bit of a moment on the exit of 1, but puts his car in front of the Mustang. It's getting a shove from Wedding there. Knock on the rear bumper of the CRE Mustang. And there's cars off in the background. It looks like it's Cox and one other. I think it might be, it's Ross. Cox and Ross off.
Yeah, actually I saw a wheel flying there as well. So
yeah, it's Cox.
He's
out. He's missing a wheel. So he's going to try and limp that car back to pit lane. So first real major casualty of the night. What on earth happened there? Let's have a look at this on the replay. Who got together with who? So Ross was on the inside there. Oh, hard to tell from that angle. Turmo was a little bit involved as well. He was caught up in it as well, possibly an innocent bystander. And that one is very much going to be left to the stewards.
Actually, no, he was out, but not the way we thought. In the end, actually, it wasn't the bum tyre that killed it for Cox, it was his engine. Yeah,
so Cox has actually blown the engine, it looks like. I'm not sure if he was trying to get back to pit lane and he's blown it. But for him, he's out of business, unfortunately. Redmond up to second place, so he's launched himself up to second, all of that. Dane Liccardo's been passed, so Will Devenish trying to get back to the lead of this race. This is where, when the chips are down for Will Devenish, this is where you've got to sink the boot in, isn't it, Rhodey? This is the only opportunity you have where you need to press home your advantage. You cannot just sit at the front of the field like Burke and then be caught by Will Devenish later. You've got to get a wriggle on. You've got to get out of dodge. Otherwise, you're sitting duck at the moment. It's hard to bet against Will Devenish with the way he's driving. So you've got to do something different.
Yeah, like the only chance they've got, it's sort of almost the field against Will situation tonight, just on Will's pace. Like, Tim's not necessarily going to win the race if he defends against Will, but if he doesn't win against Will, Will's going to win the race. So they need to, and like Darren Longden in the chat's been making the similar sort of points. He's actually very much out of the box, out of the regular square for things to happen in the race for Will to not come away with the win here. And that's the problem for Berkey. Berkey could go and pull away, but the problem is it's a tyre lock race. You can't really do that. Will Devonish with the nose at the inside, but not quite far enough up the inside, and Tim makes sure that he knows that. And actually, they're both in turn pulled away from Dane Liccardo, who's got a very, very angry train behind him of Brunswick, Wedding, Egmanus, there's Hall, there's Cox back there, Lock, everyone
is going to be
fourth down is in that train.
There's going to be a drama here at the moment, and Liccardo has to get position. Redmond off! Tim Redmond off! He's gone for a wild ride. He's gone for a major wild ride at turn 1, just as we were watching the pass being executed by Brunswick, and that's actually pressed on as well. So Liccardo, there's some contact there as well. Brunswick getting into the side of Liccardo as they tried to go side by side around turn 2. There's a one-line groove through here. You don't want to argue the point, and Liccardo left it until the last possible minute to pull out of it.
Definitely some gamesmanship going on there, even if there was no plan for a pass. Definitely making sure that Hans knew that Dane wasn't the one to back out first.
Very quickly, over to the replay. Let's have a look at what happened to Redmond, because that was completely unexpected. I think maybe he just got his turn-in point maybe slightly wrong for this corner. He was under Devonish was just following, and that's, I don't know, that's very difficult to see from that angle. I'd need to go to probably an onboard from Will Devonish to have any more indication of if there's anything else that happened with that. Again, another one most likely going to be looked at by the stewards.
Yeah, we'll come back to the present with that angry train getting even angrier up behind Dane. He did manage to put the send back on Hans Brunswick at the last corner, and he's now very much keeping everyone in his mirrors at the best visibility. What that's meaning is because Brunswick can't go anywhere, Wedding can't go anywhere, Gardiner can't go anywhere, cars behind of Ben Hall and Ryan Cox and Lockie Lock are all trying to make passes on each other. And this is what we talk about when you have someone with defense capability of yourself or of a Darren Kemp, that nobody can pass the car in front of the train, so they're not going to pass each other because they want to, it feels good in racing to pass someone. It doesn't matter if you're not making any net gains because you're all stuck behind the one driver. Best lap there for Will Devonish, 58.0. But yeah, they're all trying to get past Liccardo, who's checking them all up, and as a result, Egmanus there nearly trying to put a move on Wedding. I think he thought better of it, or Wedding just had better car speed, but that could have been an airplane crash in and of itself. And Hans Brunswick looking at another crack at Liccardo, but he's not quite got the pace of Liccardo where it matters.
No, it was very nearly another aeroplane crash there when Wedding moved it over after turn 1 to make sure that there was no way through for Egmanus at turn 2. And I was about to say, what was a 7-car scrap, which was being headed by Liccardo, and the next group was being headed by Snipes, he's now brought his group of sort of 5 or 6 or 7 cars even closer to the rear of this group. So you've got one group of 7, which is Liccardo, Brunswick, Wedding, Egmanus, Ben Hall, Cox and Lockie Lock, and then the next group was Snipes, Brown, Cheese, Bailey Hall, the recovering Tim Redmond, and then Cam Rutledge hanging on to the back of that group for dear life. And this has become a major fireball. Something's going to erupt in here in the not too distant future, I fear.
Look, if something doesn't erupt for a few laps, we might be in a situation where Higginson brings his train in, and then we have 3rd through 20th in one train. But yeah, with this sort of congestion, with this many cars now, all fucking against each other, we see Ryan Cox and Ben all having a stab. These guys are mates. They were effectively teammates in an Oliver way of putting it for last round with Cox jumping into Hall's car. And I know that Cox was headhunted by Hall to join Seri, but Will 9 cars probably big enough for the team for this year. But yes, good little battles going on there. Lockie Lock very much in a position where I don't think he really wants to run into Cox. He really doesn't want to run into Hall. Obviously, Termo doesn't really want to stuff up the guys behind as well because a lot of them are teammates. Now we got the Kiwis buying into the back of this as well with Snipes back there, Zach Brown now as well, Tim Redmond recovering back through 12 and Cheese and Hall and Rutledge, and then, yeah, not too far down the road still, Higginson and his little train.
Have a look at the view out the back of Dane Liccardo's Commodore here. It's like being attacked by hornets. There's just cars back there as far as the eye can see. It's what goes through your mind at this point, Rhodey, is that if you make a mistake, it's not the car behind you that's going to pass you, it's all the other cars behind that car that are going to pass you. That's how important this battle is at the moment. You make one little misstep, you're going to lose not 1, not 2, but about 10 spots.
Yeah, and so this is, all these little things, any little thing that comes up at this point, like Dane's going to be full concentration at this point. Keep an eye on the mirrors, obviously doing it in a legal way. He won't be mirror driving, but he'll keep an eye on where the cars are to best position himself coming into a corner that he can fend off any advantages that Brunswick might gain. And Brunswick is an experienced competitor, as is Wedding behind him. And Igmanis is not exactly a spring chicken either. Here goes, nope, I don't think he's going to move there. Brunswick, Liccardo setting himself up nicely inside just to hold off, but Wedding coming in now to the picture. And there's not really going to be room for all three of them here.
No, he's trying to go the long way around at turn 1 and 2 as Lewis Wedding. And these little group of 4 have just started to edge away now that they've cleared Ben Hall and left Lockie Lock behind. So Liccardo, Brunswick, Lewis Wedding and Igmanis have got about a half a second margin at the moment. Nobody wanting to make any false moves at this point. Back out in front though, the gap has narrowed between the race leader in Lockie Burke and Will Devonish, the pursuer, and Burke taking the defensive approach here. Going to have to hold the inside line. Going to have to really fight hard to hold the inside line here, make Will Devonish go the long way around. He leaves him a little bit of space on the outside. That's great respect.
He's actually still left him. Yeah, actually it's still got him right there, Will. But he's probably going to have the tyre life, I say, just based on how he's done so far in both races. He's managed to pull advantage out of turn 3, tricky spot, just to clear the overlap there as well, with a little bit of contact. But Will is through, and I think unless Burke's got something in the next couple of corners, that might be the story told for the lead of this race, barring any influences. I think we're still missing Nether. I think he's been dragged off to deal with other matters in his hand.
No, got it back. That's all good. It's the old cough kicking in again. But just keeping an eye on that one there. And as you were sort of saying, I don't think Burke's got anything in reserve for Devonish at the moment. I sort of agreed with Steve Warwick in the chat that it's very hard to go or bet against Will Devonish at the moment, just with the way he is driving. Burke being the major surprise packet of the night. And a bit further behind, back to this other battle, looks like Brunswick may have stolen a march, all but temporarily on Liccardo, and who locks it up heading into turn 2. This is now starting to get dicey. This is now starting to get really willing between 3 Commodores and a Mustang that's just waiting to feed off the scraps. And look, it's now bringing Hall and Lock back into play. This fighting and arguing is costing time.
Yeah, it's like, I think Liccardo knows that, like, the problem is if he gives into the pressure from Brunswick, he's not giving the pressure from Brunswick, he's giving the pressure from the next 6 cars behind him. So Raw's going to file through. It takes Liccardo be offline for 1 corner, and he's offline for the next corner, and before you know it, there goes all the time. So he's got to defend. What it means to him probably is he's not going to be too much of the tyre life at his pace. The guys behind him might actually chew through the tyres a bit more, just trying to make moves that maybe don't have to do, using more of the fact that they plan. Brunswick trying to go around the outside again, bit of contact into the door of Liccardo there, but they both keep going. Actually, Brunswick right on the outside, Wedding down
almost 3 wide. Wedding, can he control it?
Oh, that should have been like 5 crashes there for Wedding.
What a save! What a save!
Some very, very hectic wheel work, and now he's got Ben Hall as well. I think it was John McDormand in the chat that your patience will fall by the wayside and eggs will crack. And yeah, we're starting to make some scrambles for breakfast for Saturday morning, the way we're going right now.
Yeah, we certainly are. Wedding's now having another nibble down the inside of that breakfast on Turmo, and he got a much better drive out of turn 5, so he's able to get that done. He's driving a bit angry. He drove it in very, very hard into turn 6 and 7 there, and gives Liccardo a bit of a serve for good measure there. Don't know if that's in retaliation for something that just happened a few moments ago, but I'm mesmerised, Rody. Mesmerised at this battle. Brunswick's now managing to kick away. He's finally cleared Liccardo. He's got about a half a second at the moment. So can he use this to will himself towards a podium finish here? Liccardo, defensive line. Oh, and it's served. Served in the back of shot. Served in the back of shot. Who went off there? It was Ben Hall, and Redmond's off as well. And yeah, Ben Hall is recovering to part of the field. I'm not sure if Redmond was innocently caught up in that or what happened, but something went catastrophically catastrophically wrong in the braking zone there. Yeah, I think they're both involved. Here we go, coming up on the replay. So the group's ahead, and Redmond's moved, and he's just left the jig to the right, to the left a little bit too late, unfortunately for Tim.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, just a little bit of patience falling, and looking at the point where you're not going to make it past the head of the train, but you've sort of make up some spots, and that was an example of it. Just too many cars trying to fit into the one section of track. I'm surprised, honestly, that's the first one of that style that we've seen there. Because we saw Wedding a couple laps ago very nearly lose 5 times. That could have been a very similar accident. Actually, Ryan Cox was actually flying to the back of all this as well, out of nowhere actually. He was falling off the start of this race, which seems the tyre lights coming back to Cox now. He's actually fighting now with Cam done it again, with Curtis Igmanis for 6th place.
He certainly is fighting with Curtis Igmanis for 6th place. There's actually been a couple of extra non-finishes in this one as well, on top of Daniel Cox. It looks like both the Beyond Racing Young Gun entries are out of Bailey. Two are out. One of Nathan Higginson, and the Luke McHugh racing car of Ben Hall is out. I was a bit worried there for a minute that Bailey Hall was out as well, because the two B Halls are very close together on the timing tree, but no, unfortunately it is the Luke McHugh car, and it looks like Wedding's finally gotten through here. Patience will be a virtue here. Liccardo's under massive pressure.
Want to give away too much though. He's smelling blood back there.
Oh, he certainly is like a shark in the water, isn't he? He's just smelling something's about to happen here. Is Igmanis going to make a wedge against Liccardo's Commodore here, or is he going to have to do some defensive work from the Castrol Mustang? He's going to have to do some defensive work from the Castrol Mustang, and he's not done that particularly well, because he's allowed him right around the outside for turn 3, which does not give you the high ground for turn 4, because as you said before, the next part of the track goes left. But is Cox ahead? No, not this time.
Smart move for Cox. I mean, he hasn't had the experience racing these guys. He probably, I wouldn't be surprised if Tomo wasn't going to give him too much of a bar there. So smart move by Cox getting out there. He was on the disadvantage line on the outside, but he's shown he's at the pace a little bit, so he can maybe buy back into this again. That was
Cox's detriment as well too, because when he had to back out of that manoeuvre, he lost all the momentum, and he has now fallen back into the clutches of Lockie Lock. What was Lewis doing? He was like all over the road. I think he was trying to break the toe of Liccardo and Igmanis behind. Not that it has that much effect here at SMP. I mean, it takes from the whole entire front straight to do it, and realistically your passing opportunities are in turn 2. If you can follow close enough, you've be in position to strike in turn 2.
Yeah, I probably just trying to give away as much advantage, just really, also probably just for Lewis, probably getting a little bit out of his system as well, because as we mentioned, being stuck in a train for 10, 15 laps, you get a bit of energy built up that you can't really do much with, so that could have just been a drive equivalent of going and just letting it all out.
Pretty much. So heading now down into turns 6, 7 and 8 for the final, or not for the close.
Yeah, I think we've just lost Nether to a coughing fit again, but
yep,
saying,
we have.
Coming up to starting the second last lap now, and actually surprised back in the podium with the way things are going. After having not made round 1, Fuchs HSP dealer team have a 2-3 for the end of race 3.
Yeah, at the moment as it currently sits, they certainly do. Still further back in the field. Liccardo again getting the short back inside to Igmanis finally through. So this is now shuffling Liccardo down the order. Finished 2 podium positions in race 1 and 2. He's unfortunately falling through the field in race 3. We'll have to do a little bit of mathematics to work out where he sits in the overall picture for round honours after this. Definitely know it's Will Devonish and Lockie Burke top 2 at the moment. The third place overall for the round might be a little bit of a late drama and a bit of a late shock to the system, the way things are going, as Cox is now down the inside of Liccardo as well. So Liccardo is fading late here, very, very late in the piece. He's got to keep his head together for another 2 more laps, but it's becoming a bit of a tall order as he's starting to sink through the field. Yeah,
it could be a combination or singular factors of either just the pressure getting to him, and also just maybe the tyres now, probably not being a fan of the way he's having to drive that car, and Lockie Lock pretty comfortably run through 1. I'd suggest that Liccardo's tyres might be at the point where he's just trying to get to the end of the race now.
Yeah, asking a little bit too much of the car, I think, as well. Having to fight and argue over the positions too heavily has probably upped the tyre wear rate on those 4 Dunlop tyres as he heads down towards the last section of the course for the final time. Zach Brown, we haven't given too much of a mention to everybody else throughout the field. He's had a good drive through the field as as Devonish takes the checkered flag. There's been so much action yet again. And there might be another late sting in the tail here, because I was having a look a bit further through the field, and Egmanis has gotten through on Wedding. What's happened there?
I think Wedding might be tyre questionable, looking at the way he ran off that last corner. So
very late drama. So Wedding loses a spot to Egmanis late in the piece there, and yeah, he shows his displeasure at that. And off the racetrack he goes. So maybe lost a tyre very late in the piece, or ran out of rubber. So that's put a bit more of a topsy-turvy finish on things than I was kind of expecting after all of that. So you winner out of all of it, and we've missed it twice this round. I can't believe that. I'm so sorry, Will. So Will is won all three of the races, clean sweep for the weekend. So he is the round winner by a clear margin. Lockie Burke second overall for the round. 3 second place finishes. Oh, and there's a bit of shenanigans going on there. That's not great to see.
I think that what that was perhaps the HSV cars trying to do a bit of a team photo opportunity at the same time as having cars going too wide on the slowdown lap, and it's not really a full wide car spot there, so I think everyone's trying to get up to the way at the last minute, but too late for the last minute.
So Brunswick with a podium finish in the final race there, so that's a good result for him, good return. And then Egmanis recovers to 4th. That's a great recovery drive, up 7 spots, so from 11th to 4th, capitalising on all the misfortune of all the others, of only what was to be if he managed to stay on the front row of the grid or up the pointy end, if not for those 2 mistakes. Wedding 5th. Ryan Cox moves up to 6th. He also moved up 7 spots, so he took advantage of some of the misfortunes of others as well. From Locke, Liccardo faded to 8th after all of that, so we're going to have to do some maths to find out where he sits in the overall picture for the round, with Rutledge 9th. And Snipes, another top 10. He's making a habit of this. I think he's got 3 of them in the first 5 races.
Yeah, a very strong start to the season for Snipes, which obviously will help beyond in the teams and the other championship we've got going on as well. But yeah, good running for Snipes so far again tonight.
Yeah, definitely good running for them. As we look through the rest of the field as they finish that race here, Zach Brown is just outside the top 10 and 11th, so that's a learning experience weekend for him. Cheese, Brendan Ross, Tim Redmond after his mistake, Foley, Brapp, Thrower, and Bailey Hall, the last classified finisher, out after 12 laps. Ben Hall out after 10. Higginson, and Cox didn't see the checkered stripe at the end of lap 1. He was out after the contact with Brendan Ross.
Yeah, well, I think we didn't get a safety car, but the field certainly tried.
We did.
So yeah, I think the premonitions of, and to be fair, I contributed to it as well, was you know what, we've had 2 races, third race might slip a little bit. Yeah, we saw that. At the same time, there was some very hard, very well fought racing, and Liccardo might have ended up overdriving his car and maybe perhaps exceeded the envelope a little bit as well. But look, he was having a crack for position, and credit to the guys behind him that the patience was held as long as it was, because even when a driver's doing everything right in holding you off, it's still incredibly frustrating. So look, credit to the rest of the field that Liccardo ended up 8th rather than say 15th, as what could have happened the other way around. Unfortunate for Tim Redmond, he was running pretty well there to then have contact with the back of Ben Hall, which obviously put Ben Hall out of the race and put Redmond out of any meaningful points. But otherwise, that was a pretty good race.
I think so too. Actually, really good trio of races in all of that. We have got definitely our top 2 drivers have definitely been confirmed for the round, so we have brought them up. We just need to do a little bit of mathematics for the 3rd place overall for the round, because Liccardo was in that spot for 3rd overall, but because he's fallen through the field, we just need to double check the math, make sure that we know who the 3rd place overall for the round is before we go too much further. But in the meantime, Roddy, we can have a quick chat with 1st overall for the round and 2nd.
Absolutely. So we'll go top down for this one, just to give us time to work out who is sitting in 3rd for the round. But Will Devonish, pretty comprehensive run at round 1, and you've done it again at round 2. You had some challenges towards towards the end of the night, but still a pretty comfortable run.
Yeah, it's I'm pretty happy with tonight's result. With myself and the team, I really came into the round wanting to get that race too, being my 100th race, and got that. So, yeah, really stoked with that, and proud of myself, proud of the team, and proud to be part of this community and being able to stick around for 100 races.
Yeah, and that's a big stat to come through as well. You are, I believe, the first driver to come through the 100 race milestone, 100 race start milestone. And yeah, starting back in I think it was 2018. It's been a long time.
Yeah, all the way back to that first race at Adelaide, which, funny enough, I DNF'd, but yeah, coming through to now, it's really impressive to see how the group's evolved and the racecraft's evolved and competitions evolved. It's I'm pretty proud to be part of it, and yeah, and can't thank everyone enough that's been involved in the group.
Absolutely. We'll take a quick look at how your team itself went. Pretty strong result for CRE. On the overall picture, obviously a few drivers not be able to make it tonight. Noah Turra and Steve Burko not on the grid, but from those that we hear, pretty good running for the lot of them.
Yeah, pretty gutted those guys couldn't make it. Especially Noah, I reckon he would have been banging doors with me as well tonight. But yeah, some standout performances tonight. Dane getting that third place in the second race. Ben and Locke getting the best results in Supercars, and that last race, Cam made up I think 8 spots. So yeah, really couldn't be prouder of the guys at the moment.
Absolutely. Well, you can't get much more of a perfect run to the start of the season, and then a few weeks' time, we're heading over to Queensland Raceway. Any early thoughts on your thoughts of the track?
I actually quite like Queensland. It's a simple driver for a simple track. Having the hard tyre, it's going to kind of suck, but it really suits that track. So can't complain on that. But yeah, we're all pretty fast around there. We've done some pre-season testing there, and we were all pretty close to each other. So I'm hoping for a similar result when we meet back.
Absolutely. Well, good running for yourself tonight, Will, and you leave tonight with a fairly healthy run in the points. And we will catch you again in a few weeks' time at Queensland Raceway.
Thank you.
Moving over to Lachlan Burke, who, after not making round one, that's a pretty strong start for your season. Lockie Burke not able to take the win in any of the races tonight, but definitely able to fight for it.
Yeah, not a bad way to start the season. Unfortunately, missing round one due to real life racing, but really good showing for our first hit out for the year. Just a really big thank you to the guys over HSB Pixels. They helped massively with the setup and everything, and especially coming in tonight with the team turning 0 laps before official practice had begun. I think we came out pretty well in the end. I think we got third, fourth, fifth. Second, third, fifth. I think. Not sure, but all of us finishing in the top 10 for the final race. That was really good, and just the start of the season's going well. So hopefully that should be a showing, and we should be able to get the car even more hooked up for Queensland Raceway and really battle.
Absolutely. You mentioned the team, and now that you've got the full 4-car team here, pretty strong running from Pixel. Obviously, qualifying maybe not quite going the way, and there were a few instances in the races where external factors had their influence, but on pace, pretty strong work from the Pixel cars tonight.
Yeah, I couldn't be more happy.
And then you mentioned, obviously, off to Queensland Raceway in a few weeks' time. What's your thoughts at Queensland Raceway, especially with it being a hard tyre round?
Big sense.
Simple. That covers the point. Alrighty, Berkey. Great work tonight. And we will catch you hopefully in a few weeks' time at Queensland Raceway.
Yep, catch you then.
And I believe that he's now appeared here. He, by I imagine a fairly slim margin of points, he has ended up as third overall for tonight. Dane Liccardo, you made me a deal before, or you made me a verbal deal before tonight, which makes it easy to go back on. But was it something along the lines of if you got on the podium tonight that you'd be retiring?
I may have said those words.
So are we about to make an announcement, or are you about to gently walk those back?
No, I just think that means we're going to send it harder to get on the podium every single race instead of just one of them.
Well, we can talk about your racing. Obviously, you got your podium in race 2, but strong running again in race 1, and you had a lot of pressure in race 3 as well to try and back that up.
Yeah, race 3 was interesting. I'll leave it at that for now. But yeah, race 1 and 2 were a good bit of fun. Race 2, I'm pretty sure I was in the wrong car. I was just trying to rush to get into the server. But yeah, it's been a good weekend, and I can't thank everyone at Stereo enough for all their help.
Absolutely. Well, obviously, I know you've got some thoughts coming into Queensland Raceway because you do have some stuff to unveil at Queensland Raceway itself. But track-wise, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think if there's any track I'm going to get a win, it's going to be Queensland. So.
All right, that's early bold predictions out of the gate. So you've got 3 weeks worth of practice to try and back that up.
Exactly.
But good running tonight, Dane, and good to see you setting a good record now of getting a podium in each round so far of Supercars.
Thank you, Reddy.
And that has been the top 3 for the round. Handing back to you, Netta.
Thanks very much, Rody. Doing a great job as always, asking the difficult questions, but also getting all the goss from everybody down in the pit paddock before the race even starts. That's what I love about you. You just got all those questions. I didn't even know about the Dane Liccardo one, so that was a rather interesting point that you bring that up. But I guess as he just said, just means he's got to send it harder. But no, in all honesty, probably one of his better starts to the season over the first couple of rounds. Good haul of points. Yes, 1 or 2 minor little issues here and there. And, I mean, involved in the thick of the battle tonight. We'll see what comes out of that. But overall, great racing. Probably some of the best racing I think we've had to start the ASR season. And in 3 weeks' time, we will gather once again here on Outworld Broadcasting to have a look at round number 3 from Queensland Raceway. 2 80-kilometre races, hard tyre coming into play. And we will see you all there. My thanks again to Rody, to Daniel Cox Designs for sending through the race facts every round, as he always does. And, of course, to you guys at home watching. Until next time, please drive safely, and bye for now.